Chapter 1289. This is the primordial age? Are you kidding me? Liu looked at the scene in front of him, dumbfounded. His mouth was wide open for a long time. There was no Pangu splitting open the sky, no Nuwa creating humans, and no liches and demons fighting for supremacy. There was only an endless stream of cars and people in front of him. The endless stream of cars, colorful neon lights, and that familiar haze of the northwest wind. This was the primordial age? What kind of joke was this? This was clearly a modern city, okay? More importantly, Liu found this world very familiar. The smell of karma. And it's my own karma. Could it be? With a thought, Liu followed the karma link and saw the scene in the past. In a shabby rental house, there were dirty clothes thrown around, piles of instant noodles, an old computer, and a nerd with messy hair. This is Earth. This is the Earth before I transmigrated. Liu was stunned for a long time. System, this is the primordial age? Come out. I promise I won't beat you to death. A world without spiritual energy. The Earth before he transmigrated was actually the primordial age. Even if you're the proof of chaos, you can't lie through your teeth like this, right? He almost blurted out the word Motherf ***. Wait a minute. Didn't the heavenly Arch of Taishian say, he found me in the Pearl of Origin? What's going on? Liu had already been to the Pearl of Origin once. The current Earth and the Pearl of Origin had no similarities at all, confirming that the system functions are working normally and the destination is normal. This world is the primordial age. This world is also the Pearl of Origin. The system's cold reply left Liu speechless for a long time. The primordial age. The Pearl of Origin. Are you bullying me because I haven't seen the primordial age? Are you bullying me because I haven't seen the Pearl of Origin? Hint. There's more than one Pearl of Origin. While Liu was complaining, the system gave another hint. There's more than one Pearl of Origin. This is also the world of the Pearl of Origin. The heavenly emperor of Taishian said that he had found Liu in the Pearl of Origin. Liu had indeed transmigrated from Earth to South Parting Island. In that case, Earth was the Pearl of Origin. Earth is also the primordial age. Which part of this place looks like the primordial age? There isn't even any spiritual energy. Liu looked up at the horizon. The eye of chaos pierced through the endless void and saw the depths of the universe. He saw a lot of messy galaxies, but none of them looked like the primordial era. A world without spiritual chi. You say this is the untainted land? Panga would cry himself unconscious in the toilet. Could it be that too much time has passed in the primordial world? Let this world fall into the age of chaos. Liu waved his hand, and the eye of chaos shone brightly. Turn back time. Then he saw the explosion of the universe's singularity, the Big Bang, and the birth of the universe. Matter, energy, time, space, the four fundamental forces, the theory of relativity, the law of mechanics. Everything was very scientific. What the hell was spiritual energy? There was no such thing. That's the biggest problem. I've been in a fantasy all this time, and now you're talking about science with me? This situation was too illogical. Liu suddenly had a feeling that he didn't even know where to start complaining. Without spiritual chi, there was no material foundation for fantasy cultivation. The birth of the universe came from the Big Bang. Even Pangu didn't exist. You're telling me this is the primordial age? Fine. I came to a materialistic scientific world to study the method of transforming spiritual chi into primordial age. Are you kidding me? Liu was depressed. System, are you sure you didn't open the wrong door? You didn't walk into the wrong set? Which part of this place looks like the primordial age? Liu, who still didn't give up, complained to the system again. The primordial age recorded in the system's database is this plane. Once again, the system's functions are normal. The destination is normal. The system's answer made Liu speechless again. The system's database records? Can you tell me, how long has it been since you last updated the database? The expired map incident actually happened to me? The system once again confirmed that this was the primordial age. Liu's head was about to explode. Whether it's time, cause and effect, fate, or material and order, I don't see any part of this place that looks like the primordial age. Liu shook his head. What primordial age? What pearl of origin? System, you're too unreliable. Pearl of origin? Thinking of this, Liu was suddenly shocked. Heavenly Emperor Taishian said that he found me in the pearl of origin. If this is the pearl of origin, he can see the entire universe at a glance. There's no need to look at all. So, there's still a secret here? A world without spiritual qi. To Liu, could see the entire universe at a glance, let alone Heavenly Emperor Taishian, who was stronger than Liu. If he wanted to find a person, he could find it at a glance. It was effortless, and there was no need to say the word find. So, the system said that this was the primordial age. Perhaps it really was the primordial age? If the Lord of Chaos hid me here, then he must have used some means. It's very likely that he hid the primordial age. With Liu's current realm of the first step of chaos, it was normal that he couldn't see through the Lord of Chaos's means. So, I have to find the hidden primordial age first. Thinking of this, Liu was speechless again. System, can't you just send me directly into the primordial age? Why do you still want me to look for it again? Isn't this a waste of time? The system had never been an object that could be reasoned with. It was impossible to reason with a rigid machine. Then, I'll leave it at that for now. What can I do? I'm also very helpless. With a wave of his hand, Liu's image changed greatly. From an otherworldly expert, he became a short-haired urban youth in white casual clothes. Since I've returned to Earth, let's figure out how long it has been. It had been many years since he transmigrated from Earth to South Parting Island. But Liu still couldn't figure out how long it had been on this Pearl of Origin Earth. Fortunately, it was easy to look at the time in modern cities. With a casual glance, Liu saw the time on the display screen of a building in front of him. One day, Liu was completely stunned. What the hell? I've been tossing and turning in the Origin world for so many years, and I've been tossing and turning in the myriad worlds for so many years, but here, only a single day has passed? Well, to be precise, not even one day, only one night. If I didn't know, to the Lord of Chaos, time has no meaning and can control time at will. I would think that I've gone crazy. Helplessly shaking his head, Liu looked to the west. My current location is in EC City. If I want to find information about the primordial age, I'm afraid I have to go to some famous mountains and holy lands to inquire. Thinking of this, Liu turned around and was about to head to the famous Taoist mountains. Suddenly, a call sounded behind him. Liu, what are you still doing here in a daze? You're going to be late for work. Work? Liu's body trembled. How far away are these words? Sorry. Originally, it was supposed to resume the third chapter today. But with the arrival of the provincial inspection team, the entire education system was in chaos. The author could only accompany them all the way. Along the way, he listened carefully to the leader's speech and earnestly learned and understood the leader's instructions. During the meeting, he took the risk of being called and took the time to write. Chapter 1290. Liu turned around and looked at the man who greeted him. It was a young man in his 20s. He was wearing a suit from a street stall. He had a crew cut and was slightly plump. Even with Liu's soul cultivation, it took him a while to come back to his senses. Only then did he remember that he still had to go to work. What the F***CK was this? Yu Huang de Tianzuan, who ran amok in the universe, actually had to go to work? I only needed a little bit of energy, and the money I exchanged would be enough to kill you. Dusty memories flooded his mind. Those memories that were almost forgotten by Liu once again surged into his mind. He had already remembered. He remembered this place, remembered this person, and also remembered the reason why he had transmigrated. Before transmigrating, Liu was a loser technical ape intern. Liu, who had just graduated from university, became a server maintenance technician in this technical department called Reading Literature Group. One night, when he was on a night shift, he was too tired from staying up all night to play games. When he got up to go to the toilet, he bumped into the server cabinet in the computer room. Then, he transmigrated to South Parting Island. According to the time in this world, this was yesterday, After figuring out the ins and outs of the situation, Liyu's face showed a relaxed smile, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Brother Dalong, I was on a night shift yesterday. I don't have to go to work today. Don't have to go to work. Why did you wake up so early? Brother Dalong was stunned for a moment. Then he was surprised. I haven't seen you for one night, and you seem to have changed into a different person. That's strange. Really? Liu smiled and nodded. I just took a shower and changed my clothes. I just felt a little more energetic. Brother Dalong, I still have something to do. I'll leave first. With that, Liu waved his hand and walked out. He really seems to have changed into a different person. He still looks the same, but it feels wrong. Temperament. Yes, his temperament is completely different. He looks very confident. He even looks like a manager. Brother Dalong looked at Liyu's back and scratched his head. He was puzzled. How did a poor loser become like this in just one night? Could it be that this guy has found a girlfriend? Work? How long has it been since I heard this word? Even at my current level, my heart still palpitates when I hear the word work. Liu remembered the maintenance job of guarding the computer room. He smiled and shook his head. For a loser, going to work was indeed a great horror. I fell down in the engine room and transmigrated. Liu suddenly remembered that the server room of the reading literature group had countless books stored in it. Holy **T. The worlds I transmigrated to were all books stored in that server. Could it be? Liu suddenly turned around and looked at the office building behind him. He looked at the floor where the servers were stored. The world I transmigrated to was filled with books stored in the server. That server, could it be a Chaos Supreme Treasure? An existence equivalent to the system? With one step, Liyu's figure instantly appeared in the server room. At this moment, in the server room, several of Liyu's original technical department colleagues were seriously playing games. They didn't even bat an eyelid at Liyu's sudden appearance. It's still a familiar scene. He saw a certain fatty who was killing fiercely. He pulled out a pair of feet with a strong smell from his shoes and stepped on the legs of the chair. Liu sniffed and added, "It's still a familiar smell." Without disturbing these colleagues, Liu looked at the row of cabinet-style servers in front of him. He scanned with his divine sense. Everything was normal and scientific. Other than the smell of feet that was comparable to a chemical weapon, he didn't sense the slightest bit of Xuanhuan aura. The server is fine. Then, the worlds I transmigrated to, where did they come from? Heavenly the Arch-Tai-Xian said that he found Li Yu from the Pearl of Origin and then let Li Yu transmigrate to South Parting Island. With Heavenly the Arch-Tai-Xuan's cultivation and strength, this wasn't difficult to do. Even if Li Yu himself wanted to create a few transmigrators now, it would be a matter of waving his hand. However, the worlds that Li Yu transmigrated to through the system were exactly the same as the worlds in the books in the server. This was a problem. Heavenly the Arch-Tai-Xian couldn't have created these worlds for Li Yu, right? System, the worlds I transmigrated to, were they created by you from the information you found in this server? Li Yu's transmigration to the heavens was related to the system. If it was a world created by the system with this information, it wasn't impossible. The world's information has always been stored in the system's database. It wasn't created by the system. The system doesn't have the ability to create worlds. It wasn't a world created by the system. Then who was it? Liu shook his head, waved to his original colleagues, and turned to walk out of the server room. Wait. I transmigrated to the outside world. I should have discovered that these worlds were related to my previous work. I should have discovered their origins long ago. Why did I only think of it now? There was an even more crucial point. When Liu knew that Brother DeLong called him to work, he recalled his experience on Earth. Before, he had always ignored or forgotten this memory. Someone tamper with my memory? How could I not discover it? It was as if a part of his memory had been sealed. It wasn't until he came to this world and came to the place where he worked that this memory was unsealed. I was born in this world. This world is both the primordial world and the Pearl of Origin. There's also the matter of the memory seal. It seems that this world is very unusual. Walking out of the office building, Liu walked onto the street and walked aimlessly. I'm the son of chaos. In my memory, I really don't have parents. I'm an orphan. Could this memory have been tampered with? Thinking of this, Liu looked up at an orphanage on the edge of the city, stepped out, and instantly arrived outside the orphanage. This was a quiet orphanage, a place where Liu had lived for a long time. The past was vivid in his mind, but he didn't find anything unusual, nor did the sealed memory appear to be unsealed. I've lived here for as long as I can remember. I've never investigated my origins. I wonder if the old principal knows where I came from? If he was really the son of chaos, it made sense that he didn't have parents in the mortal world and didn't have a background. But who knew if this was true or not? The title of Son of Chaos was heard from the heavenly emperor of Taishian. Who knew if what he said was true or false? Thinking of this, Liu walked into the orphanage. Mr. Liu, you're back. Just as he walked to the door, Uncle Liu, who was guarding the door, walked up to him. Grandpa Liu, I'm here to see Grandma. Is Grandma home? Liu smiled and greeted Uncle Liu. Grandma? Which Grandma? Uncle Liu looked at Liu with a puzzled expression. Liu was stunned. Zhou Qingxia, Grandma Zhou. Don't you remember? Zhou Qingxia, Grandma Zhou. Child, what are you talking about? Why did we have such a person in our orphanage? Uncle Liu looked at Liu with a puzzled and worried expression. Child, are you okay? There's no such person? There's no such person? Liu's heart was in turmoil. A person who had taken care of Liu for more than 10 years actually didn't exist. Chapter 1291. Uncle Liu doesn't know of Granny Zhou's existence. Uncle Liu didn't know a person who existed in Liu's memory. This surprised Liu. Did someone tamper with it? Did someone erase Uncle Liu's memory? Liu reached out and waved his hand. His gaze pierced through time and karma, looking for clues. She doesn't exist. He didn't know if he didn't look, but when he did, he was shocked. Liu traced back time and karma, but he couldn't find any trace of Granny Zhou's existence. How is this possible? Liu was already in the first step of the chaos. For a person who existed in Liu's memory, even if someone else tried to erase her, they could only kill Granny Zhou at most, but they couldn't erase the traces of her existence. Even if the Lord of Chaos did it, as long as I'm not dead, everything in my memory will never disappear. Liu furrowed his brows tightly. If she hadn't been erased, unless Granny Zhou was like the voice that didn't exist in the timeline and was no longer within Liu's detection range. That's interesting. It turns out, I was raised by a very powerful existence. Was it really the Son of Chaos? Then, who was Granny Zhou? Where did she go now? Since she was so powerful, why did she let Heavenly Emperor Taishian take me to South Parting Island? He couldn't think of a reason, but Liu had clearly discovered that the world of the Pearl of Origin was extraordinary. Finding the location of the primordial world is the most important task now. Let's put this aside for now. Liu said goodbye to Uncle Liu and turned to leave the orphanage. Taking a step, Liu broke through the void and instantly left the East Sea, arriving in the Northwest Wilderness. This is the world of Earth. The one with the closest connection to the primordial world should be Mount Kunlun. Looking up at the towering snow mountain that stretched for thousands of miles in front of him, Liu shook his head again. With Liu's eye of chaos, he could see the entire Mount Kunlun at a glance. There wasn't the slightest bit of supernatural. It was just a stretch of barren mountains and ridges. There wasn't the slightest bit of atmosphere of an ancient divine mountain. If I could see through it at a glance, I wouldn't have to walk to Kunlun Mountain. Since I'm already here, I might as well go through it myself. Stepping onto Kunlun, Liu did not use any of his dermic powers. He walked up Kunlun like an ordinary person. The cold wind whistled and snowflakes filled the sky. On this snowy mountain, Liu was like a mortal as he climbed up the mountain step by step. Just like a mortal. That was all there was to it. When Liu reached the top of the mountain and saw the team of mountaineers in front of him, he realized that he was only wearing a single piece of clothing. He didn't bring any equipment. How abnormal was that for him to climb Kunlun like that? You've gotten used to being a transcendent, so you've subconsciously overlooked these things? Liu smiled and shook his head. Fortunately, it was easy to remedy the situation. With a wave of his hand, the power of creation of the origin of matter was activated. In an instant, Liu created a set of professional mountaineering equipment for himself. Winter clothes, ice boots, gloves, rope, helmet, glasses, steel awls, and a series of other equipment were put on. With a supply bag on his back, Liu was finally normal. As he moved forward, Liu's speed was much faster than those mountaineers. Not long after, when the team of mountaineers in front found a leeward to set up camp, Liu caught up with them. "Hello." From afar, Liu waved his hand and greeted the camp. There were a total of 4 people in the leeward camp: a middle-aged man, 2 young men, and a guide who seemed to be a local. "Hello. Hello. You're alone?" The middle-aged man who seemed to be the leader got up and walked up to Liu. "You came up alone? That's too dangerous. Climbing the mountain is very dangerous. How can you go alone? Follow us for the rest of the journey." "Thank you." The middle-aged man had good intentions, so Liu had no reason to refuse. He walked forward and reached out to shake hands with the middle-aged man. "My name is Liu, a mountaineering enthusiast. Please take care of me." "You're welcome. Take care of each other. That's what I should do." The middle-aged man shook hands with Liu and introduced himself to Liu. "My name is Tang Chuan. I'm also a mountaineering enthusiast." As he spoke, the middle-aged man pointed to his companions and introduced them to Liu one by one. The 2 young men were called Meng Li and Wang Zhijiang. They were both good friends of Tang Chuan. The local guide was a Tibetan man with curly hair and a dark face. His name was Dorji. "Shally, you even brought wine? You wasted all the weight on this?" Tang Chuan was stunned when he saw Liu take out a bottle of Maodai from his backpack. The weight of mountaineering had to be carefully considered. Who had extra weight to drink? Wasn't this too amateur? It was really lucky that such a daring and foolish person didn't die from mountaineering. "I'm strong, so I carried a little too much," Liu explained with a smile. Then he took out a few glasses and poured a glass of wine for each of them. "Come, let's warm up. Are you here for picnic?" Tang Chuan reached out and took the wine glass from Liu. He shook his head. "Shally, the road ahead is more dangerous. You can't be careless. You must listen to my instructions." Yes. I'll definitely listen to the expert's instructions." Liu smiled and responded. Then he raised his glass and toasted each of them before starting to chat with them. After chatting and laughing for a while, everyone became familiar with each other. Liu then set his sights on the Tibetan man, Dorji. "Brother Dorji, is there any legend about Mount Kunlun among the locals?" Liu raised his glass and clinked it with Dorji's as he asked with a smile. "Haha, you're asking the wrong person." Hearing Liu's words, the young man next to him smiled and said, "Mount Kunlun is a famous Taoist mountain, especially Jade Void Peak. It's the ancestral court of Taoism. The Tibetans all have Buddhist surnames. What do they have to do with Mount Kunlun?" "Mount Kunlun, Jade Void Palace, primeval Lord of Heaven. I know about that." Liu smiled and nodded at Meng Li. Then he looked at Dorji. "I'm just curious. I want to hear if there's a local version of a legend." "Brother Liu, it's not like there's no local legend." After a few glasses of wine, the forthright Tibetan man had already treated Liu as a brother. He spoke without beating around the bush. "There's a legend among the herdsmen here. It said that someone saw the light of Buddha near Mount Shaoqian, 300 miles to the east." "Ha! What kind of legend is that? Isn't that too unreliable? The light of Buddha appeared in the ancestral court of Taoism." Meng Li laughed so hard that he fell over. The others also laughed out loud. The light of Buddha appearing in the ancestral court of Taoism was too unreasonable. It was like hanging a portrait of old Madong in a shop of gnawing chicken. It was simply malicious. Light of Buddha? Liu secretly remembered it in his heart. Mount Shaoqian? Looks like I have to go there and take a look. Chapter 1292. Shally, you're not walking properly. After resting for a while, the team continued their journey. Tang Chuan began to teach Liu again when he saw him walking leisurely. You have to be careful with every step you take on a glacier. If you slip or miss a step, your life will be in danger. It's dangerous for you to walk so carelessly. As he spoke, Tang Chuan even demonstrated for Liu to imitate his walking posture. Liu felt helpless when faced with such a helpful person. Crack! Tang Chuan was teaching him how to walk steadily on the ice when the layer of ice under his feet suddenly cracked, revealing a huge crack. Ah! Tang Chuan's foot missed a step, and he fell down with a cry of surprise. An arm suddenly reached out and grabbed Tang Chuan, who had fallen into the ice crack, and pulled him out of the ice crack. Mr. Tang. Mr. Tang, are you all right? Meng Li and the other two who were walking in front ran over in panic. That was close. Everyone broke out in cold sweat when they saw the bottomless crack below them. Thank you. Shaoli, thank you so much. Tang Chuan wiped his sweat and thanked Liu profusely. You're welcome, Mr. Tang. Liu smiled and waved his hand. This was a piece of cake for him. Although Tang Chuan was a bit of a teacher, he had good intentions. Naturally, Liu couldn't just stand by and watch him fall. Good moves. Good strength. The Tibetan man, Duo Ji, gave Liu a thumbs up with a face full of admiration. That's right. Mr. Tang, including his equipment, weighs about 100 to 200 kilograms. Liu, you lifted Mr. Tang with one hand. You're so strong. Don't tell me you're a martial artist. No wonder you dared to climb the mountain alone. No wonder you're carrying so many things. You're a master. Meng Li and Wang Zhejiang stared at Liu with glowing eyes. There really is a martial arts master. He's just a little stronger. What kind of kung fu is that? Liu smiled and shook his head. I prefer to exercise. As he spoke, Liu suddenly turned his head to look at the ice crevice beside him. Not far from Liu, the bottomless ice that Tang Chuan had just stepped on suddenly flashed with a ray of light. The faint golden light was very weak and gentle. However, in this pure white world of ice and snow, this radiance was very conspicuous. It was as if a golden rainbow had pierced through the bottomless ice and soared into the sky. Buddha's light. The Buddhist light flashed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The Tibetan man, Duo Ji, cried out in shock and quickly knelt on the ground devoutly, chanting a series of scriptures. Kaka! A series of cracking sounds could be heard. Hearing this voice, Tang Chuan and the others turned pale. That crack in the ice was continuously cracking. Avalanche! Tang Chuan cried out in shock, his face ashen. There were many dangers when climbing the snow mountain, but an avalanche was the greatest danger. If one encountered an avalanche, unless one was extremely lucky, there was basically no chance of survival. Kaka! The speed of the cracking of the ice layer became faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, the large piece of ice that everyone was on suddenly separated from the cliff. Rumble! Like a landslide, the entire ice layer suddenly collapsed and fell rapidly from the mountain peak that was thousands of meters high. Tang Chuan and the others cried out in pain as the ice layer collapsed and fell from the mountain peak that was thousands of meters high. Am I going to die? The panicked Tang Chuan suddenly realized that Liu, who was beside him, was not laughing. What was so funny about this? Tang Chuan was stunned. Suddenly, he saw Liu waving at him. Then, Tang Chuan and the others appeared at the foot of the mountain. They appeared in a hotel in a town outside Kunlun Mountain. In their memories, they had already reached the top of the mountain and successfully returned, completing the magnificent feat of conquering Kunlun Mountain. It really is the Buddha's light. How interesting. After sending Tang Chuan and the others to the foot of the mountain, Liu stood in the air and looked at the collapsed glacier in front of him with a face full of surprise. When it was buried under the ice, even I couldn't see anything unusual. It was only when Tang Chuan stepped on the crack that the Buddha's light appeared. With Liu's realm, it was too strange that he couldn't sense the abnormality that was close at hand. Liu stared at the crack in the ice that appeared in front of him. There was a crack that cut through the ice and went deep into the mountain. The flash of Buddha's light came from this crack. I want to see what it is. This world was very strange. There seemed to be a barrier that blocked Liu's perception, making him unable to sense the existence of beyond science. However, the Buddha's light just now seemed to have appeared on its own accord, deliberately letting Liu see it. creating a Buddha's light in the Taoist ancestral court. This is clearly intentional. Liu leaped up and rushed into the crack in the ice. Since they deliberately lured me here, how can I not come? Liu needed to find the primordial world in the first place. Even if this clue was deliberately given by someone else, it was better than no clue at all. After walking for 100 feet along the crack in the ice, there was a crack that went deep into the ground. First was the crack in the ice, and then there was a crack in the rock. Liu fell straight down into the bottom of the crack. At the bottom of the crack was an ancient altar. It was simple and ancient, as if it came from the source of time, from the beginning of heaven and earth. There was a layer of chaos surrounding this ancient altar. This was no ordinary chaos chi. Instead, it was a chaos restriction. It was as if a chaos realm expert had cast a chaos restriction around this altar, sealing it in the chaos. Someone sealed this altar? Looking up at the altar sealed in the chaos, Liu frowned. No wonder I couldn't sense it. So it was sealed by the chaos? If one didn't come into close contact with the chaos, even with Liu's current realm, he wouldn't be able to sense the existence hidden in the chaos. In that case, that Buddha's light deliberately broke through the chaos and revealed itself. The current situation was obvious. Someone had deliberately used the Buddha's light to break through the altar, deliberately revealing a strange phenomenon to lure Liu here. Then, how did the person who released the Buddha's light know that I'm coming? How did he know that I'm here? Unless Liu's heart tightened as he looked up at the sky. His gaze pierced through the rocks and the ice to look at the horizon. Unless someone is watching my every action on Earth. It was like watching a movie. Perhaps someone was watching Liu's actions on Earth like a movie. An observer? Or a mastermind? Liu's lips curled into a sneer. If you want to trick me, then let's see who's more powerful. He had to work overtime on weekends, gathering all kinds of information and reporting materials. It was indescribably miserable. Chapter 1293. A sacrificial altar that has been deliberately revealed. Liu looked up at the ancient sacrificial altar in front of him and stepped forward. His body suddenly collapsed and transformed into a chaotic state, passing through the layer of chaotic airflow that sealed the sacrificial altar. Only chaos could exist in chaos. Without transforming into a chaotic state, Liu would not be able to pass through it. But why could the sacrificial altar exist in the chaotic airflow? Liu's figure appeared on this ancient and huge sacrificial altar. Looking at this ancient sacrificial altar, Liu frowned slightly. This was no ordinary sacrificial altar, but one formed from chaos. More importantly, he felt a heart-palpitating power from this sacrificial altar. The sacrificial altar was about 1,000 feet in radius and was octagonal in shape, similar to an 8 trigrams plate. In the middle was a pitch-black and deep black hole. Chaotic turbulence stirred wildly in the black hole. Matter, order, space-time, karma, fate, everything was in a mess. It was as if a huge and violent chaotic turbulence was imprisoned in the middle of the sacrificial altar at the moment of annihilation. The power that made Liu's heart palpitate came from this black hole. Even in his chaotic state, he would be in great danger if he entered this chaotic turbulence that was on the verge of annihilation. Around the black hole, the octagonal sacrificial altar was divided into 8 regions. Each region exuded a different aura, as if each aura was a type of chaos. A type of chaos? In Liu's opinion, chaos was the only thing. No matter how the external appearance changed, the essence was the same, chaos. For example, although the armor and weapons of the terracotta soldiers that Liu encountered and the silver-armored warriors were different, the essence was the same. However, the 8 auras exuded from the 8 regions of the sacrificial altar, each different, made Liu feel that they were clearly chaos. There are many forms of chaos. Liu had just taken his first step into chaos and did not have a comprehensive understanding of chaos. He was very curious about these 8 different forms of chaos. This is the reason why you deliberately lured me here, using these 8 different forms of chaos to tempt me. If that's the case, fine, you succeeded. If one hears the Tao in the morning, one can die in the evening. Although Li Yu didn't have that kind of sentiment, the temptation of chaos knowledge was irresistible to Li Yu. A chaos being who is prepared isn't so easy to kill. Even if it was bait, Li Yu planned to swallow it. With a wave of his hand, Li Yu placed the Emperor Yu bell on top of his head, and the heavenly worthy seal and hornet sword floated beside him. He was ready to deal with any changes. No matter how powerful the attack was, the 3 chaos treasures would be able to withstand it for an instant. As long as there was this moment of buffer, Li Yu was confident that he could escape unscathed. If he really couldn't do it, didn't he still have the system? He could just run away. Now, we could take a look at the 8 different types of chaos. Li Yu lowered his head and glanced at the altar. He sensed the aura of the Buddhist light in the area in front of him. Since you're the one who lured me here, I'll start with you. I'd like to see what you've got. Returning to his chaos form, Li Yu released a stream of chaos chi and swept it toward the Buddhist light area in front of him. Buddha is merciful. The Buddhist sound was vast and mighty, and the Buddhist light soared to the sky. When Li Yu's chaos chi touched the Buddhist light area, the area that occupied 1/8 of the altar suddenly lit up with Buddhist light. There was only Buddhist light and no other phenomenon. The pure Buddhist light described the most fundamental principle of the great Tao and unreservedly displayed the principle of chaos contained in it. Everything is void. This was the principle of chaos contained in the Buddhist light. I see. Seeing this scene, Li Yu was enlightened. This was the Tao of chaos chi. This was a Buddha who was demonstrating to Li Yu his way of vaporizing chaos. If Li Yu hadn't given so many opportunities, he would have thought that this was a peerless opportunity. Unfortunately, Li Yu had long known the principle of don't be greedy. Having cheated so many people, when he saw an opportunity, his first reaction was, "Who wants to cheat me?" That's... At this moment, Li Yu suddenly sensed from the Buddhist light that there was a vast and boundless world behind the Buddhist light. That place was full of spirit chi. That place shone with immortal light. That place was mysterious and unfathomable. That place was the primordial world. This was a door. The Buddhist light was a door to the primordial world. Interesting. Really interesting. If he wanted to chaos chi, he sent the Tao of chaos chi. If he wanted to find the primordial world, he sent a door to the primordial world. Isn't this too good to me? Big Boss Li, who had cheated so many people, had long stopped believing in scams such as Fated Person and Destiny. Aren't there 7 other areas? Let's compare the goods. Li Yu smiled and waved his hand. Let's see what other people are offering first. I'm sure you won't have any objections, right? In a flash, Li Yu stepped out of the Buddhist light area and walked to another area of the altar. The altar was divided into 8 areas. One area was the Buddhist light, and the others, what were they? The origin of creation is chaos. The second area lit up with the pure light of life, as if it was the origin of all life, the origin of all matter. The state before life is born is chaos. Seeing this light of life, Li Yu smiled and nodded. All right, this is indeed the way to chaos. This was another great Tao of chaos chi. In addition, this light of life was also the door to the primordial world. Since I said to compare the goods, of course, I have to listen to all the offers. Walking out of the area of the light of life, Li Yu continued forward. Destruction is chaos. Everything in the world was destroyed, returned to nothingness, returned to chaos. Infinite primordial chaos is chaos. Before heaven and earth were born, there was chaos. Chaos is Tao, Tao is chaos. The apex of order and laws was chaos. Nirvana. 2 more Buddhist lights lit up, also displaying the great Tao of chaos chi. Heavens will cannot be defied. Heavens will cannot be defied. Heaven is Tao. This was the Tao of sovereign. This was also the Tao of chaos. After walking through the 8 areas, he saw 8 different Tao of chaos chi. Although it was only the final Tao and not a specific Tao, it gave you a lot of insights. However, this is not what I need. Every Tao led to chaos, and could lead to chaos. However, that was not Li Yu's Tao. The altar is a huge pit. Yes, not one, but eight. 8 huge pits. 8 different Tao of chaos Qi were displayed, and 8 doors to the primordial world were also displayed. Unfortunately, every door was not that easy to enter. Entering someone else's door and borrowing someone else's Tao, debts had to be repaid. Chapter 1294. Karma is not to be owed. In all heaven world, Li Yu tried every means to settle karma. How could he dare to casually accept other people's benefits and owe others karma? These 8 paths, these 8 doors, now seemed to be opportunities and benefits. They didn't seem to have any malicious intent. But when borrowing money, they treated you like a lord. When collecting debts, they treated you like a grandson. These 8 experts in the second step of the chaos realm, their methods certainly wouldn't be worse than loan sharks, right? If I don't walk their path, if I don't go through their doors, how can I enter the wilderness? Li Yu raised his eyes and looked at the center of the altar. He frowned as he looked at the chaotic turbulence that was emitting endless destructive aura. If I walk your path, it will be a smooth path. If I don't walk your path, it will be a dead end. Did you set up the altar just to tell me this? Li Yu looked up at the sky, at the void, and a determined look appeared on his face. Whether it is Buddhism, Tao, creation, or the ruler, they are all my Tao, and none of them are my Tao. My Tao is the root of everything, all-encompassing. How can I walk your path? With a flick of his sleeve, Li Yu walked toward the center of the altar, toward the black hole that was full of danger and chaotic turbulence. Did you set up these things to give me a choice? On one side is the path of the great Tao, and on the other side is incomparably dangerous, but he reached out and the profound yellow sword fell into his hand. But why should I listen to you? Why should I be at your mercy? He raised the profound yellow sword high, and the chaotic energy that could annihilate all things surged. I have always been the one to manipulate others. Who can manipulate me? The path you give me, whether it is a smooth path or a dangerous one, I will not choose any of them. My path is beneath my feet. My path is beneath my sword. If there is no path, I will cut out a path. If you don't give it to me, I will take it. Boom! Sword energy soared into the sky, containing Li Yu's unyielding will. The chaotic sword energy that could annihilate all things soared into the sky and fiercely chopped down at the altar in front of him. This sword strike didn't just hit the altar. This slash represented Li Yu's choice. From then on, he became enemies with the 8 masters of the second step of chaos who left the door on the altar. In the battle for the great Tao, one was either friend or foe. Even if the entire world is my enemy, what is there to fear? The all-annihilating sword light landed heavily on the altar. Sigh. There seemed to be a sigh in the void. When the sword light slashed down, the 8 lights of the second step of the chaos suddenly dissipated. Without the 8 lights of the second step of the chaos, the ancient altar was instantly annihilated by Li Yu's sword and turned into nothingness. All that was left was a black hole that contained endless danger and chaotic turbulence. You're still playing such petty tricks at this time? How shameless! Li Yu looked at the black hole and sneered. With a wave of his hand, the exalted celestial seal rushed up and smashed into the black hole. Boom! Li Yu unleashed all the power in his body with this strike. Vast and mighty chaos Qi swept out and blasted the black hole into nothingness. When the black hole was destroyed, Li Yu saw the primordial wilderness. The black hole formed by the chaotic turbulence was annihilated, and a passage surrounded by chaotic energy appeared in front of Li Yu. Through the passageway, Li Yu saw that on the other side of the passageway was the primordial lands. A cold snort of humiliation and anger sounded in the void. Someone seemed to have been angered by Li Yu's shameless and his act of destroying the black hole. At the level of the chaos, you're already at the pinnacle of existence in the multiverse. You have to be magnanimous when doing things. Li Yu curled his lip in disdain when he heard the angry snort. The door on the altar was an open and above-board scheme. Even if you're up to no good, I won't look down on your character. But at this point, you still want to use the chaos turbulence to trick me? That's too petty. Liu sneered, raised his sword, and stepped into the chaos passage. What tricks do you have? Bring it on. I'll take it. It's too embarrassing to play such petty tricks again. Don't make I look down on you. You ha ha ha. In the void, some people were choked speechless, while others were laughing out loud. Primordial wilderness, I'm coming. Raising his sword and puffing out his chest, Liu walked along the chaotic passage, taking one step at a time towards unknown dangers. This journey would be incomparably perilous. The 8 experts at the second step of the chaos who'd left the door on the altar had become his enemies. A single enemy at the second step of the chaos was already very dangerous, let alone 8. The struggle for the great Tao was a matter of life and death. Liu had long been aware of this point. In the world of supreme supremacy, experts had fought for hundreds of millions of years for the fruit of the Tao. They fought until the heavens fell and the earth cracked. In the world of Fortune Destroyer, a group of golden immortals and Tao ancestors had racked their brains and schemed for countless years for the sake of Tao convergence, creation, and eternity. There were countless examples of the same. The struggle for great emperor enshrouding heaven, the struggle for immortal emperor in perfection, the struggle for yang spirit, the struggle for mortals to become immortals, and so on. The situation in front of him was the same principle. Every chaos supremacy's goal was to become a complete chaos and become the only master of the chaos. There were already 8 existences at the second step of the chaos in the myriad worlds. That was already too many. Therefore, Liu, a figure at the first step of the chaos, was a competitor to the 8 second step chaos supremacies. Suppressing competitors was the consensus of the 8 chaos supremacies. That was why there was an altar. Liu was on the altar. No matter which supremacy's door he chose, he would be under the door. Walking the path of others, he would never surpass others. Naturally, there would be no more competitors. However, I've always been walking my own path since I started cultivating. Even if I've learned from many people, even if I've learned many cultivation techniques, in the end, everything is from my own path. Holding the long sword tightly, Liu strode forward with his head held high, step by step, and stepped out of the passage. They didn't intercept me halfway. It wasn't until Liu walked out of the passage and stepped into a vast and boundless world that the expected interception did not come. They're quite generous. If they want to fight, then they'll fight openly. Liu sheathed his sword and looked at the world in front of him as a smile appeared on his face. This was the primordial world. The sun hung high in the sky, and there were golden crows soaring. Immortal clouds lingered, and spiritual chi was abundant. In a vast and boundless land, the spiritual chi in the earth veins was like a torrential river. In the sky, immortal birds soared. On the ground, strange beasts galloped. This was the primordial world. Chapter 1295. First of all, I have to figure out where I am. Stepping out of the chaos channel, Liu appeared in the middle of a vast mountain range. There was no way forward to reach the village, and there was no shop at the back. There was not even a shadow to be seen. Since there's no one here, I'll take a look myself. With a flash of chaos in his eyes, Liu's gaze pierced through time, karma, fate, and then humph. With a cold snort, a dominating heavens will swept over like a raging tide, shaking Liu's gaze away from time, karma, and fate. Can't I even take a look? I said you're petty, and you still won't admit it? With this cold snort and this heaven's will, Liu immediately knew the identity of this person. This was the primal chaos venerable who regarded heaven as the way, the one who had set a trap for Liu and left behind a chaotic black hole. They didn't attack me directly, but set up so many obstacles for me? Liu did not know why these 8 primal chaos venerables did not attack him directly. However, he already knew that it would be very difficult for him to reach the second step of primal chaos in this primal chaos. Liu would definitely be the one who obstructed others from attaining the Tao. I'm not someone who will be intimidated by difficulties. Liu had already expected the difficulties of reaching the Tao of primal chaos. This path not only had its own difficulties, but also external obstacles. Reaching out to press the hilt of the sword at his waist, Liu's fighting spirit rose even higher. In this primal chaos world, there were 8 experts who had reached the second step of primal chaos. This proved that this world was indeed the best place to reach the second step of primal chaos. With a clear goal, even if the path was long and difficult, there was nothing to fear. If I can't see through it at a glance and get information from heaven and earth, then I'll just ask someone. How big of a deal is that? Being rejected by heaven's will. Although Liu was a little inconvenient, it was not a big deal. Releasing the profound yellow sword, Liu flew up on the sword, picked a random direction, and flew away at a high speed. As expected of the primordial world, they flew for tens of thousands of miles. Below them were mountains that stretched up and down. Each mountain was filled with spiritual chi and was surrounded by immortal clouds. In other worlds, it would be a holy land for cultivation. However, this place was a desolate mountain range. Not only was there no sign of human habitation, there weren't even any monsters. There aren't even any demons? Liu was shocked. He suddenly realized that there were no demons in the surrounding tens of thousands of kilometers apart from some ordinary wild beasts. This was very abnormal. With the abundance of spiritual energy in this area, even a blade of grass would become a demon in a few hundred years, right? Why aren't there any demons? Unless, where did this cultivator come from? How dare he barge into Grandpa Golden Armor's territory? Die. In the mountains below, an earth-shattering roar suddenly erupted. A gigantic claw covered in scales rushed out of the ground with a rumble, viciously slamming down at Liu. Is this the reason why there are no demons around? Pangolin. Seeing this gigantic claw, Liu smiled and nodded. I was just about to ask someone for directions. You delivered yourself to me. He stretched out his hand and grabbed. A huge force was generated and pulled out the pangolin that was hiding underground. The pangolin, which was hundreds of feet long, was pulled up into the sky by Liu. It was so shocked that it screamed, "Shut up. If you make any more noise, I happen to be hungry." Braised pangolin is also a famous dish. Liu glanced at the pangolin with a cold face. His cold tone revealed endless killing intent. Great immortal, spare me. Not only was it frightened by Liu's aura, but it was also frightened by the braised pangolin. This pangolin demon immediately admitted defeat. I just have some things to ask you. As long as you answer honestly, I can't be bothered to bicker with you. Pressing down on the escape light, Liu casually threw the pangolin to the ground. Kid, just you wait. The moment it landed on the ground, the pangolin, who admitted defeat, suddenly burst out with a flash of yellow light. It left a ruthless sentence and drilled into the ground. The pangolin was very confident in its earth escape ability. As long as it drilled into the ground, Liu would not be able to catch it at all. Clang! The pangolin, who plunged into the ground, seemed to have hit a layer of steel. It was dizzy and its brain was in a daze. Point at the ground and turn it into steel? The pangolin looked at Liu with a face full of horror. This kind of point at the ground and turn it into steel magical ability could be used at will. Could this cultivator be a celestial immortal? Point at the ground and turn it into steel? I's move is much more powerful than point at the ground and turn it into steel. Liu chuckled. Point at the ground and turn it into steel is just to let this piece of land have some of the characteristics of steel for a short period of time. On the other hand, turn this piece of land into steel. He reached out and knocked on the ground, making a dang-dang sound of knocking on steel. Liu raised his eyes to look at the pangolin. I only asked you a few questions. After asking, I will leave. If you're not honest, I will also turn you into a lump of steel. Gold immortal? Turning the ground into steel, this kind of creation magical ability to change matter was obviously the symbol of a gold immortal. But the pangolin gritted its teeth, straightened its neck, and looked as if it was facing death. Thief, don't even think about getting half a word from me. Although I am a demon, I also have a loyal heart. Empress will avenge me." With a loud roar, the pangolin's spiritual energy erupted, and suddenly self-destructed. Damn, did I meet a lunatic? Or did I meet a terrorist? Liu hurriedly pointed his finger. Freeze. Freeze body, freeze mind, freeze all things in the world, freeze the flow of time and space, and everything returned to stillness. With this move released, the pangolin's self-destruction would definitely not be able to continue. But this magical ability that imprisoned the laws of heaven and earth suddenly was blocked by a heaven's will. Boom! The pangolin self-destructed. A huge amount of spiritual energy of the earth suddenly erupted, destroying mountains and breaking mountains. A large part of the surrounding mountains shook and collapsed. Of course, this kind of power under the chaos was completely ignored by Liu and could not hurt Liu at all. Preposterous. Liu was furious. When he used the body-freezing technique just now, the origin of the heaven's will that blocked it was self-evident. This was obviously someone deliberately tricking him. The Eye of Chaos was blocked, so Liu could only find someone to ask. The exit was where this pangolin was, so Liu naturally could only find this pangolin. Then, in order to protect the secret of the Empress, the pangolin self-destructed with incomparable ferocity. Liu cast a spell to block it, but was blocked by the heaven's will again, and the pangolin self-destructed successfully. How could Liu not see through such an obvious trick? I was wrong to say that you're petty. How are you being petty? You're clearly shameless. Liu pointed to the sky and cursed angrily. Ah, gold ingot! How dare you kill my disciple? Thief! I'm going to grind your bones to dust. A woman in a jade-green robe flew over angrily. She waved her hand, and with a loud boom, 2 golden lights shot into the sky. Roar! Dragon roars shook the sky, and 2 golden primordial flood dragons burst out with dazzling golden light, snaking into the sky. Their heads were like scissors, and their tails were like strands. Suddenly, they turned into a pair of scissors. One cut in half, and there was no way to block it. F***CK. This is the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. Liu was depressed. Golden Flood Dragon Scissors, goddess by Shao. This is the disciple of the Grand Master of Heaven. She just came and already made such a big mistake. Simply too disgusting. Chapter 1296. Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. One of the most famous killing weapons in the wilderness. With a single cut, nothing could stop it. However, Liu is no longer in the concept of matter. The power under the primal chaos could not hurt Liu at all. Buzz! Suddenly, the golden flood dragon scissors trembled and a monstrous aura soared into the sky. Primal chaos circulated on the scissors blade. At this moment, Liu actually felt a sense of danger from the golden flood dragon scissors. F***CK. You're actually playing this kind of trick? How could you not see through it? This was clearly the doing of that heaven's will again. This was too disgusting. Yes, it was disgusting. Although the primal chaos aura on the golden flood dragon scissors was tyrannical, it was not difficult for Liu to deal with it. Apart from being disgusting, it had no other effect. You want to disgust me, right? Liu's lips curled into a sneer. With a wave of his hand, the profound yellow sword flew out of his hand. The primal chaos sword light that could annihilate all things suddenly erupted and slashed at the golden flood dragon scissors, tearing the sky and cutting the clouds, destroying heaven and earth. The profound yellow sword emitted a monstrous aura that could annihilate time and space. The power that could destroy all things shook heaven and earth. The power of this attack was just enough to block the primal chaos aura on the golden flood dragon scissors. There was no more or less. It was just right. However, the moment the sword hit the golden flood dragon scissors, the primal chaos aura on the golden flood dragon scissors disappeared instantly. As expected, Liu sneered in his heart. How could Liu not have thought of such an obvious trap? This was clearly to let Bai Shao die in Liu's hands. Bai Shao was the disciple of the Grand Master of Heaven. Liu had just arrived in the wilderness, and he had already killed the Grandmaster of Heaven's disciple. This was to make Li Yu and the Grandmaster of Heaven's enmity. Are you trying to trick me? Li Yu sneered, as if he did not notice that the primal chaos aura on the golden flood dragon scissors had disappeared. The profound yellow sword emitted a boundless aura and slashed down mercilessly. Boom! The profound yellow sword struck the golden serpent scissors. With a slight explosion, the golden serpent scissors, transformed from the immemorial golden serpent scissors, was instantly annihilated by the chaotic chi and turned into nothingness. Golden dragon scissors. At this moment, Bai Xiao was scared out of her wits, and her face was pale. As the true disciple of the prime of Tong Tian, and having two sisters to take care of her, Bai Xiao was proud and arrogant. She did not take anyone seriously. But now, he discovered that he had kicked an iron plate. The golden flood dragon scissors had already been destroyed, and death was right before his eyes. Tears of regret rolled out of Bai Xiao's eyes. I just want to teach you a lesson. I won't be used by others. After destroying the golden flood dragon scissors, Li Yu stretched out his hand and was about to retrieve the profound yellow sword. However, he discovered that there was a force interfering with his control of the profound yellow sword. It pushed the profound yellow sword forward, causing it to continue slashing towards Bai Xiao. You're still attacking. Hee, I want you to make a move. Li Yu seemed to be unable to control the profound yellow sword, allowing it to slash at Bai Xiao. The profound yellow sword, which had destroyed the golden flood dragon scissors, was unobstructed and did not stop. This sword tore through the sky and ruthlessly slashed towards Bai Xiao. It seemed that Li Yu had no scruples and did not care at all. Whoever dared to block the way, whoever dared to cause trouble, would be cut down by this sword. It seemed like this was the case. If you want to trick me, then you must be prepared for my counterattack. The profound yellow sword was not an ordinary magic treasure. It was not refined from any high-grade divine materials, but had grown with Li Yu. Of course, such a magic treasure was not something that others could interfere with. When the profound yellow sword tore through the sky, bringing with it the power to destroy all things and annihilate time and space, the moment it slashed towards Bai Xiao's head, bang! Like a soap bubble bursting, the sword light that could destroy the heavens and exterminate the earth suddenly disappeared. Without the profound yellow sword, but the force that was interfering and pushing the profound yellow sword was still there. At this moment, without the profound yellow sword's concealment, the power of heaven's will was completely exposed. For ordinary cultivators, they could not detect this power. But for an expert at the second step of the chaos, this was like a louse on a bald head. It was obvious. When a mastermind behind the scenes deceived others, what was he most afraid of? What he was most afraid of was being caught red-handed when he tried to do something underhanded. Li Yu had deceived people for countless years and had a deep understanding of this. Just like that, the power of heavens will appeared clearly. How, Ian? You dare to scheme against me? Even if heavens will covered up the secrets of heaven, at this critical moment when his disciple was about to die, with Tong Tian's realm, how could he not notice it? Once heavens will appeared, an expert at the second step of the chaos saw through the cause and effect at a glance and understood the truth. Clang, the shrill sound of the sword soared into the sky, and an endless aura of destruction soared into the sky. Four sword lights intertwined, and the four immortal swords slashed into the depths of the void with Tong Tian's fury. You guys take your time to fight. Li Yu shrugged his shoulders and turned to look at Bai Xiao, who was already scared silly. Seeing Li Yu looking at her, Bai Xiao cried out in alarm and took a few steps back in fear. The cultivator in front of her was very unfamiliar, but that terrifying and monstrous power was about the same as her master, Tong Tian. This made Bai Xiao unable to resist at all. Don't be nervous, Li Yu smiled. This matter is just that someone is behind it. They want you to die in Ai's hands, and want I and Tong Tian to become mortal enemies. I don't know. Bai Xiao was like a child who had been wronged, tears rolling down her eyes. Among the three Zhaos, in terms of temperament, Bai Xiao was the worst. She was proud and arrogant, just like a spoiled child. Forget it. You just need to know that this is a misunderstanding. Li Yu was too lazy to explain anything to Bai Xiao. I broke your golden dragon scissors, and I will give you a pair of golden dragon scissors. He reached out and grabbed, and time reversed. Ripples of time rippled. Li Yu's arm reached into the long river of time, and with a grab, he pulled the golden dragon scissors out of time. Without anyone interfering with the will of heaven, Li Yu could easily use the ability to reverse time. Here you go. With a wave of his hand, he threw the golden dragon scissors to Bai Xiao. Li Yu asked Bai Xiao again, "By the way, I'm here to ask for directions. Where's this place? What year and month is it now?" Huh? Bai Xiao was stunned for a moment and didn't come back to her senses for a long time. This is the coast of the East Sea. What year and month? I have been cultivating on the three immortal island. We are immortals who live forever, and we don't care about the year. All right. Li Yu shrugged his shoulders. Then that's it. I will take my leave. Waving his hand, Li Yu turned and left. Although Bai Xiao didn't care about the year, since the three Zhaos weren't dead, it wasn't time to become a god yet. The current time period was before becoming a god. As for the exact time, it wasn't important. After being counterattacked by me, Hao Tian probably won't dare to be arrogant anymore. Looking up at the sky, he saw that the four-sword lights were still whistling in the void. Li Yu curled his lips. You're just Hongjuan's boy. You borrowed Hongjuan's power and dared to attack I. Hee. You'll see in the future. Chapter 1297. Hao Tian's attack was Hongjuan's idea. At this time, Hongjun had already Dao integration and achieved chaos in the form of the heavenly Dao. This form of chaos controlled the heavenly Dao and needed to deal with the evolution and evolution of the entire world at all times. Basically, it was a busy person who was always busy. Hongjun did not have time to ask about other things, so Hao Tian was a spokesperson that Hongjun had pushed out. This spokesperson is so active in tricking I. Is it for Hongjun? Or is it because he has some other thoughts? A cold smile appeared on Li Yu's face. How could being a spokesperson and being someone else's puppet compare to being the master of his own house? Therefore, it was normal for Hao Tian to want to kill Li Yu and replace him. Borrowing Hongjuan's power can indeed interfere with I a little, but that's all. You want to kill I and replace me? Hao Tian, you're courting death. Li Yu had done it a few times, so he did not mind doing it again. Ignoring Hao Tian's annoyance, Li Yu took a step forward and soared into the sky, leaving the East Sea. That's Huagu Mountain? Li Yu was not in a hurry to travel on the clouds. Along the way, he looked around at the sky, the ground, the wind, and the clouds. He looked at the primordial world as if he was playing. After flying for tens of thousands of miles, Li Yu sensed a majestic mountain that towered into the clouds in front of him. With a thought, he immediately knew that this was Huagu Mountain. I was just about to settle the score with Hao Tian when a thug appeared in front of me. Very good. With a step forward, Li Yu's figure landed on the peak of Huagu Mountain. At the peak of the mountain, a huge rock stood tall. It was a huge rock that was 100 feet tall. It looked ordinary and did not seem magical at all. However, under the gaze of Li Yu's chaos eye, he saw the creation of heaven and earth. The dragon veins of the great earth gathered under the huge rock. The sun and moon converged here, and the wind and clouds gathered here. Heaven and earth sensed each other, and yin and yang converged. In addition to that, the boulder itself was extremely mystical too. 5-colored godly rays were flowing continuously. The combination of the 5 elements and the intersection of yin and yang was a spiritual embryo of the world. Has the monkey not been born yet? Looking at the huge rock, Li Yu smiled and shook his head. The saints of this world are all good at scheming. They are good at strategizing and planning. A one-track-minded fellow like Monkey was conned and a half-dead, just like that. Li Yu walked to the front of the boulder and raised his arm. A bit of light lingered on his fingertip. The great sage, heaven's equal, has been cheated to the point that he can only eat vegetarian and pray to Buddha. He can't even find a girlfriend. How pitiful. With a flick of his finger, a speck of light shot out and flew toward the spirit embryo. Amitabha. Suddenly, a Buddhist chant resounded. A Buddhist light flashed and blocked Li Yu's attack. Almsgiver, where there is a cause, there is an effect. After blocking the light that Li Yu flicked out, an ethereal voice rang out from the Buddha's light. Tathagata. Li Yu glanced at the Buddha's light and shook his head with a smile. That's right. Where there is a cause, there's an effect. The Buddha's light on the Kunlun snow mountain in the human world is karma. In the ice crevices of the Kunlun snow mountain, a Buddha's light rushed out and led Li Yu to the underground sacrificial altar. This was karma. If not for my Buddha's light, you probably wouldn't have found the path to this world so quickly, right? Buddhists have opened the door of convenience. This penniless monk has good intentions. A huge Buddha condensed from golden light faintly appeared in the Buddha's light. Tathagata put his palms together and smiled. Almsgiver, everything has long been destined. The monkey is destined to seek the scriptures. Almsgiver, your fate has long been destined. Just face it calmly. Why do you have to seek trouble? Destined? Huh. Li Yu laughed out loud. However, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He reached out and pressed on the hilt of his sword. My fate is in my own hands. Who could decide my fate? You or you? If you want to control my fate, we'll have to see how capable you are. Amitabha. Tathagata put his palms together and shook his head with a smile. The Buddha's light flashed, and Tathagata's incarnation suddenly disappeared. He left just like that. Tathagata, what does this mean? Li Yu thought that he would have to fight, but he didn't expect that his punch would hit nothing. Tathagata said a sentence without rhyme or reason and left just like that. Is it destined? Taking a deep breath, Li Yu's eyes were filled with determination. He reached out and pressed on the stone fetus in front of him. I don't believe in fate. I only believe in myself. Monkey, I believe you don't believe in fate either, right? I don't want this world to cover my eyes anymore. I don't want this earth to bury my heart anymore. Monkey, an unruly monkey. A monkey that refuses to submit to heaven and earth. Go against the heavens and smash this fate. He struck out with his palm, and a beam of light rushed into the stone fetus, awakening the stone fetus's intelligence. Ayo! Faintly, an unruly and unyielding ape's roar sounded from the stone fetus. Never lower your head. Never yield. A monkey wearing the circle tightening spell is no longer a monkey. You don't want to wear the circle tightening spell, and neither do I. The 8 second-step experts of the Chaos Realm must be the saints of this world. Hongjun, Taishang, Yuanshi, Taunton, Nua, Tathagata, Amitabha, and Judy were the 8 of them. With these 8 second-step saints in the Chaos Realm, it would be very difficult for Li Yu to vaporize the chaos. Fate. If these 8 join forces to suppress me, it's almost an unchangeable fate. But can this make me retreat? Li Yu sat cross-legged beside the stone fetus, grabbed the hornet sword, placed it across his knees, and slowly closed his eyes. At the peak of Mount Huagua, next to the stone fetus, Li Yu was actually guarding here. 1 day, 2 days. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. In these 10 years, Li Yu used the dream path reincarnation technique to let the monkey in the stone fetus experience all kinds of journey to the west. The return of the great sage, Moonlight Treasure Box, Big Shrew Monkey, Li Yu had heard, seen, and made up all kinds of journey to the west. He let the monkey experience all kinds of journey to the west. I won't teach you any principles. I'll let you experience it yourself. Let you experience it yourself, and let you choose for yourself. What kind of monkey do you want to be? Countless reincarnations, countless experiences, countless painful howls, countless sorrowful roars, I think. You've seen it clearly, you've thought it through. The road is under your feet. You can walk it however you want. Standing up, Li Yu looked at the monkey that was still being nurtured in the spirit embryo and nodded with a smile. You have your path, and I have mine. Let's work hard. Pressing down on the long sword, Li Yu waved his hand at the giant stone spirit embryo. With a flick of his sleeves, he turned around and stepped on the clouds, floating away. Chapter 1298. After staying in Huava Mountain for a year, Liu left. In this year, the intervention of the saints that Liu expected did not come. Apart from Tefegida, who came to say something, no one else appeared. Fate, everything in the untainted world is in your control. Your will is your destiny. So, you don't care about my actions at all? Liu sneered. It's good to be confident, but conceit will make you suffer. How dare you look down on me? How dare you look down on me? Oof. All this time, Liu, who had always been high and mighty, had been treated as a small fry in this primordial world of the Pearl of Origin. This made Liu feel a little amused, and he also had a belly full of anger. If you are confident enough to think that I can't overturn the sky, then I'll overturn the sky for you to see. Holding the hilt of his sword tightly, Liu's blood surged and his fighting spirit rose. Vaporizing the primordial chaos will allow my cultivation to reach a new level. This is my only way out. But how can I vaporize chaos? After looking at the 8 great Tao on the altar, Liu had some understanding of the technique of vaporizing chaos. He would not walk the same path as the 8 saints. He had to walk his own path of the origin of matter and order. It was all-encompassing, and everything returned to chaos. This was Liu's path of vaporizing chaos. I've already walked very far and very deep on this path. In the mortal world, Liu cultivated qi. From the initial 5 elements to the origin of all things, the Xianwang qi. In the world of the renegade immortal, Liu evolved the yin and yang qi on the basis of the Xianwang qi. The origin of matter of the Xianwang qi and the origin of order of the yin and yang qi finally returned to chaos. This path was very clear and correct. However, Liu still could not take this step. He felt that there was still a key missing. Without this key, he could not take this step. What is this key? Opportunity? Enlightenment? What am I missing? Liu frowned. He had no idea what was going on. Perhaps this is the source of those saints' confidence. They know that I'm missing this crucial point and can't become chaos, so they're not worried about me at all. Liu let out a long sigh, shook his head, then rode on a cloud and flew away. Treading on clouds, Liu left the territory of Mount Huagua and arrived at the boundless Dongsheng Divine Land. In the Dongsheng Divine Prefecture, humans and demons mixed together. Demonic qi filled the mountains. In the flatlands, there were enormous human cities. Hundreds of millions of humans lived on this vast land. Boom! While flying, Liu suddenly heard a loud noise coming from the front. Raising his head, he saw a 10-jong-tall bear standing on its hind legs. Wielding 2 massive hammers, it charged straight at him, crushing everything in its path. In front of the gigantic bear, there were 2 cultivators who were fleeing pathetically. "Senior, save me. Senior," were disciples of the Kongtong sect. This bear demon has eaten countless humans and brought disaster to the world. It's evil beyond redemption. Senior, please slay this demon. When the 2 fleeing cultivators saw Liu flying through the air on a cloud, they hurriedly cried out for help and desperately ran towards Liu's direction. Slay demons. Liu glanced at the 2 humans and 1 demon. A murderous aura rushed out of each of their heads. None of them were peaceful and virtuous cultivators. Humans slay demons and demons kill humans. There was really no right or wrong in this. There's only strength, no good or evil. At Liu's realm, he was no longer limited to a certain perspective. Instead, he was looking at the highest point of the entire chaos. However, I was a human. I was born to be human. It was natural for him to attack whenever he wanted to. With a flick of his finger, a huge force rushed out and sent the gigantic bear flying hundreds of miles away. "Senior, you're amazing. Thank you for saving our lives, Senior." The 2 Kongtong disciples were shocked that he could send the ferocious bear flying hundreds of miles with a casual flick of his finger. It's nothing. Liu would only care about such matters when he was in the mood. If he was not in the mood, he could not be bothered. After nodding at the two of them, Liu flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. "Senior, please wait." Liu was about to leave when he suddenly heard the two people behind him calling out to him. Liu stopped and looked back at the two of them. "What's the matter?" "Senior, we can't repay you for saving our lives." A Kongtong cultivator held up a jade invitation and bowed as he presented it. "Senior, this is an invitation from Immortal Qingfeng, a disciple of Grand Immortal Jing Yuan of Longevity Mountain's Fifth Manor. My ancestral master has some ties with Immortal Qingfeng. This invitation, Fifth Manor? Zenyuanzi?" Before the Kongtong cultivator could finish, Liu suddenly laughed. "Ha ha! Zenyuanzi, Zenyuanzi, interesting, interesting." With a loud laugh, Liu flicked his sleeves and took a step forward, disappearing instantly. "Say, Senior, I'm not done yet." The two Kongtong cultivators looked at each other. Breaking through the void, Liu took a step forward and instantly crossed an endless distance, arriving at the fifth manor of Longevity Mountain. In front of him was an ancient Taoist temple. It looked ordinary, but it contained endless mysteries. The thick power of the earth condensed. It did not show its sharpness, but it carried all things. "Fellow Taoist Zenyuanzi, if you want to invite me here, just say it. Why beat around the bush?" When he saw the jade invitation in the Kongtong cultivator's hand, Liu saw through the karma. The invitation was not important at all. The Kongtong cultivator only needed to take it out and say Fifth Manor of Longevity Mountain to complete the task. This was just a signal for Zenyuanzi to invite Liu over. The heavenly secrets are unknown and the will of heaven is unpredictable. If I don't beat around the bush, I'm afraid I won't be able to invite you. A middle-aged man with a long beard in a Taoist robe stepped out of the fifth manor with a smile on his face. He cupped his hands and bowed to Liu. "Will of heaven." Liu looked up at the sky and shook his head with a smile. After being cut by the Grand Master of Heaven a few times, Hao Yin still has the guts to reach out. Hao Yin is nothing. Without Hao Yin, the will of heaven is still there. Zenyuanzi smiled. "Fellow Taoist, please come in. I was about to disturb you." Liu also wanted to see what tricks Zenyuanzi was up to. He followed Zenyuanzi into the fifth manor. "Fellow Taoist, please take a seat." After sitting down in the hall, Zenyuanzi did not hide anything and directly explained the purpose of his visit. "I invited you here today just to talk about the mysteries." "Oh? Talk about the mysteries?" Liu frowned slightly. "Talk about the mysteries? Isn't that just bragging? You specially asked me to come over and chat with you? You really have ideas." "Fellow Taoist, don't be anxious." Zenyuanzi glanced at Liu and said with a smile, "Talking about the mysteries in the Tao. The greatest Tao in the world is naturally the sage. Do you know how to become a sage?" "Huh?" Liu raised his eyebrows. Wasn't becoming a sage the second step of the chaos? This method actually belonged to the category of bragging and chatting. Everyone knows the method of turning the chaos into chaos. Am I the only one who doesn't know? Fellow Taoist, the key to becoming a sage is only the primordial violet vapor. Zenyuanzi pointed to the sky. The reason why the sages could ascend to the sage position is that they obtained the primordial violet vapor left behind by Pangu. A wisp of primordial violet vapor, a sage position, that's all. Primordial violet vapor? I see. At this moment, Liu suddenly understood. The key to achieving the second step of the chaos was the primordial violet vapor. But where could he find the primordial violet vapor? Moreover, why did Zenyuanzi deliberately tell him this key? What was his purpose? Chapter 1299. Hongmeng, Immortal Vapor. What exactly is it? After leaving Wu Zhuang Taoist Temple, Liu had been thinking about this question. At Liu's level, he naturally would not regard Hongmeng Immortal Vapor as a real qi. To enter the second step of chaos, it was impossible to integrate some kind of external qi. The body of chaos could not contain anything other than itself. Hongmeng Immortal Vapor that Zhen Yuanzi mentioned was the key to becoming a saint. Liu had heard about it and knew the relationship between Hongmeng Immortal Vapor in the same position. However, Liu could not figure out what the primordial violet energy was no matter how he thought about it. Zheng Yuanzi said that his good friend Heng Yun also obtained a Hong Meng immortal vapor, but it was robbed and he died. Liu's finger unconsciously flicked on the hilt of his sword as he fell into deep thought. 9 is the limit of the number. There are 9 sage positions in the great desolate world. Hong Yun died, so there is still 1 sage position left. Hong Meng immortal vapor that disappeared was the key to becoming a saint. But why did Zheng Yuanzi tell him this? Liu didn't believe that Zheng Yuanzi didn't want to become a saint without any desires. Hong Meng immortal vapor was also very important to Zheng Yuanzi. He could not give it up. Why did he send this key to becoming a saint to him? No matter what you were planning, this Hong Meng immortal vapor, maybe I have to fight for it. Stepping on the clouds, Liu's figure broke through the air and flew towards the human kingdom of the southern viewing department continent. Breaking through the void, Liu arrived at a huge city. This was a huge city with a population of 1 million. Among the humans coming and going in the city, apart from most of the mortals, there were also some people with special abilities and some qi refining cultivators. Since I entered the untainted land, actually, Liu looked up at the sky, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Actually, you've been watching me all this time. After breaking the altar and entering the untainted world, Liu had been stared at by those sages. Everything, no matter how big or small, fell into the eyes of the saint. Being stared at like this, there was nothing he could do. In order to find the primordial violet qi, he had to think of a way to advance to the second step of primal chaos. If he continued to be watched by these fellows, even if Liu found the key to advancing to the second step, he would not be able to do so. So, I need to change my avatar so that I can continue playing with you. Only by getting rid of the surveillance and turning from the light to the dark could Liu reverse the current unfavorable situation. Only then could he turn from a victim to a hidden mastermind behind the scenes. Destroy your cameras first. With a slap of his hand, a surge of primal chaos qi surged out and turned into a giant primal chaos palm. Then, it slammed toward the law of the heavens. Who was Heavenly Tao? The Heavenly Tao is Hong Jun. If he did not destroy Hong Jun's camera, Liu would always be monitored. Of course, defeating Hong Jun, with Liu's current realm, this was simply impossible. Oof. When Liu struck out with his palm, a cold snort faintly sounded in the void. The power of heavens will filled the air and swept over as if the world was furious, crushing Liu's primal chaos palm into pieces. The power of the second step of primal chaos was a level higher than Liu's. Liu's attack was swept away without any surprise. It could not even scratch Hong Jun's skin if Hong Jun still had skin. However, Liu never thought that this attack could do anything to Hong Jun. All he needed was Hong Jun to make a move. Even if Hong Jun was at the second step of primal chaos, he could not ignore Liu's attack. He had to make a move to deal with it. As long as he made a move, he would naturally break free from the realm of controlling the heavenly Tao, and this camera would be turned off for a moment. A moment was enough. The moment the power of heavens will crushed the primal chaos palm, Liu's body exploded, turning into a primal chaos qi that instantly enveloped a radius of 100,000 miles. The giant city and the surrounding 100,000 miles were all blocked by this primal chaos, blocking all spies and covering all karma. In just an instant, the primal chaos qi that covered a radius of 100,000 miles dissipated. Everything returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Oh, he's gone? At this moment, the sages were shocked to discover that Liu had disappeared. They could not divine the secrets of heaven. From time, karma, and fate, they could not find any traces of Liu. Liu, who had been monitored by them, suddenly disappeared. Oof. There seemed to be anger in the heaven's will. Ha ha. Interesting. Interesting. The figure that exuded the will of destruction clapped his hands and laughed loudly. Faintly, there were 4 sword lights trembling in the laughter. Amitabha, the merciful Buddha, chanted the Buddhist name, and was silent. How many people were there in the 100,000 miles around the giant human city? How many beasts were there? How many living beings were there? How many things were there? The primal chaos body could naturally transform into anything at will. For a moment, the heavens was unclear and the primal chaos covered it. Even if the sages had high cultivation, they could not find where Liu was. He actually managed to escape? Cunny frowned slightly. The tree of 7 wonders in his hand flashed with a ray of light. He sneered. It's not that easy to escape. Putting down the tree of 7 wonders, Kundi glanced at the sky. He put his palms together, and a merciful look appeared on his face. Umitba. Sin. Sin. Boom. There was an earth-shattering explosion. The sky was filled with blood-red light. It was filthy, ferocious, vicious, and terrifying. The blood-red light was like a sea of blood. It rushed to the sky above the giant city in an instant and covered the area within 100,000 miles. The monstrous sea of blood came crashing down on the vast area. The Blood Sea Styx destroyed all living beings. Under this attack, millions of humans, billions of living beings, and everything within 100,000 miles would be destroyed. How dare you, Mingi? Seeing this, Niwa was enraged. Niwa was the holy mother of the human race. The human race was also Niwa's child. Mingi's attack would definitely kill millions of humans and billions of living beings. How can Niwa bear this? She waved her hand, and the mountain river map flew out. Goddess Niwa, please calm down. Niwa had just released the mountain river map when she found a ray of 7-colored light blocking her way. Kundi, how dare you stop me? Niwa was furious. She was about to activate the mountain river map when she found that there was a new change below. Mingi, you're courting death. A ray of sword light shot up into the sky. The holy light covered the sky. The Xianyuan sword shone with a mighty light as it slashed at the sea of blood. Mingi, how dare you bully the human race? An 8 trigrams rushed out and covered the area below the blood sea, protecting it firmly. The human race will not be bullied by others. A 9-colored stalk of rice followed closely behind, sweeping heavily towards the sea of blood that surged into the heavens. Mountain River Map, Great Formation of the 9 Cauldrons. In the land of the 9 states, huge cauldrons shot up into the sky with mighty divine power. Fire of the human race, eternal flame. Swarinchi's fire rod burst into flames and swept out in all directions. This time, Patriarch Mingi had poked a hornet's nest and pissed off the holy emperor of the human race. Chapter 1300. Since the human emperor has retired, he shouldn't show himself again. Above the 9 heavens, the supreme sky mirror broke through the air and shot out a beam of light. It smashed down heavily on the Xianyuan sword. A jade hairpin flew out from the jasper lake and slashed at the 9-colored rice along with the supreme sky mirror. It's fate that this place will be invaded by demons. Why do you have to defy fate? 2 beams of light shot out from the northern underworld ocean. The river diagram and Book of Luo flew out and smashed at the 8 trigrams diagram and the 9 cauldrons formation. Ah, it's fate. The UN2 and Avicii swords flew out from the sea of blood and slashed at Swarinchi's fire rod. The sea of blood continued to press down on the 100,000 miles of territory below. Fate. How dare you demons call it fate? In the 5th manor of the Longevity Mountain, a towering tree soared into the sky with a loud rumble. The boundlessly huge tree swept towards the sea of blood. Boom! The Xianyuan sword slashed at the supreme sky mirror. The jasper lake hairpin hit the 9-colored rice. The river diagram hit the 8 trigrams diagram. The Book of Luo hit the 9 cauldrons, and the UN2 and Avicii swords slashed at the fire rod. The ginseng fruit tree hit the sea of blood. At this moment, several powerful forces exploded with an earth-shattering boom. The heavens and earth shook, and the void collapsed. This chaotic battle caused the heavens and earth to shatter, and the chaotic spiritual energy of heaven and earth swept out in all directions like a storm. When the chaotic airflow swept out, A thatched hut appeared on the ground below. Yu Chao, don't fight. I only know how to build houses. My house is unbreakable. What was a house used for? Shelter was one thing, but more importantly, it was used to protect the people in the house. As soon as the thatched hut appeared, it firmly protected the land within a radius of 100,000 kilometers, preventing the territory from being affected at all. Oof. A cold snort came from the nine heavens. The supreme sky mirror flew up and disappeared. The Jasper Lake hairpin followed and flew into the heavenly court. I'll take my leave too. The river diagram and Book of Luo flew into the northern underworld ocean. Human Emperor, Zhun Yuanzi, take care of yourselves. Yuan Tu and Avicii swords flew into the blood ocean. The blood ocean converged and turned into a beam of bloodlight. It tore through the air and disappeared in an instant. Take care of yourself? Do you think that by making a move like this, you are following the saint's wishes? Heaven's will is hard to fathom. Mingi, you're the one who should take care of yourself. The ginseng fruit tree turned into a beam of green light and flew away, returning to the fifth manor of Longevity Mountain. No matter what schemes you have, you can't target the human race. The Xian Yuan sword let out a clear cry and flew through the air. Immediately after, the nine-colored rice ear, the 8 trigrams diagram, the fire rod, the 9 cauldrons, and the thatched cottage all turned into light and disappeared. Just like that, the billions of living beings within a radius of 100,000 miles managed to escape a calamity. Thanks to you guys, I was able to escape. For this matter, I owe you a favor. In a village under a cliff outside the city, a young hunter wearing animal skin clothes and carrying a longbow on his back walked out of a cottage with a smile on his face. This person was naturally not Li Yu. In the primordial world, the heavenly Tao controlled everything. With Hong Jun, the heavenly Tao, around, Li Yu, a stowaway without a household registration, could not escape Hong Jun's eyes. If Li Yu wanted to walk steadily in this world, he had to have a household registration and an identity card. He had to find a person with good luck and impersonate him. He had to use this fake identity card to do things. Only then would Li Yu be able to escape the eyes of Hong Jun and the other saints. Within a radius of 100,000 miles, there had been such a huge commotion just now. Everything here would be included in the focus of observation. If Li Yu wanted to impersonate someone, he could not do anything here. Therefore, Li Yu is not the young hunter, but woof woof. A hunting dog happily rushed out of the cottage and followed behind the young hunter into the vast mountains. Don't misunderstand. His Majesty Emperor Yu would never turn himself into a dog. He had turned into a strand of dog hair. It seemed that dog hair was even worse than a dog. An illusion. This was definitely an illusion. His Majesty Emperor Yu would never admit to such a thing. The hunter and the hunting dog rushed out of the forest. When they crossed a mountain stream, a strand of hair on the hunting dog's body fell off. Then it disappeared in an instant, turning into a drop of water and merging into the water. It flowed along the mountain stream and merged into the river, flowing east. A fish swallowed a mouthful of water. Then a fish scale grew on the fish's body. An osprey picked up the fish with its mouth and swallowed it. A feather grew on the osprey's body. The goshawk preyed on the osprey. Just like that, he allowed things to develop naturally. He did not interfere with anything and was not tainted by any karma. 1 day, 2 days. 1 year, 2 years. Demon, how dare you commit murder and harm people? When a human cultivator killed a tiger demon, he found an old jade slip on the tiger demon's body. This is the great Brahma spirit scripture? The human cultivator picked up the jade slip and looked at it. He suddenly realized that this was a very profound demonic cultivation technique. 100 years of cultivation is not as good as becoming a demon with a thought. Whether it's the righteous path or the demonic path, what scruples do I have? After making up his mind, this person followed the requirements of the cultivation technique. He bit his middle finger and smeared the jade slip with blood. With a buzz, the jade slip turned into a bloody light and rushed into the cultivator's mind. Boom! There was a loud sound in his mind. Apart from the demonic cultivation technique, this cultivator suddenly awakened the memories of his previous life. Earth? I'm a transmigrator? At this moment, the cultivator came to a realization and understood his origins. I really transmigrated? Ha ha! I transmigrated to the cultivation world. Immortality. Killing in all directions. I'm the main character. The cultivator laughed loudly, his entire body filled with endless confidence. Such stories happened everywhere in the entire primordial world. For 2 years, Liu went with the flow and did not interfere with the development of anything. However, he was doing his old job. He was sending opportunities everywhere, creating main characters everywhere, and creating transmigrators everywhere. Along the way, he threw out all kinds of opportunities and created all kinds of transmigrators. I'll muddy the water and let these main characters mess up the heavenly secrets. Let's see how you can monitor me. This was Liu's plan. This was also what Liu was best at, sending out countless opportunities and creating countless main characters who defied the heavens and changed their fates, filling the primordial world with endless variables. A single variable will bring about millions of different futures. I'll give you thousands of variables. I'll give you all kinds of karma, fates, and futures that you can't even calculate. Let's see how you plan. The main character of Long Out Yin, the main character of mystifying confidence, the main character of decisive killing, and the main character of Chinibu. Let all kinds of weirdos mess up the world. Chapter 1301. Heaven's Secret. Why is it in such a mess? Unknowingly, Hong Jun, who was in charge of the heavenly Tao, suddenly realized that there were countless changes in the heaven's will. This made Hong Jun, who was in charge of the heavenly Tao and everything, a little confused. The heaven's will is in chaos. Why is this? The group of sages was also surprised to find that their calculation of the heavens was getting more and more obscure and blurry. In the end, they could only see a piece of chaos, and nothing could be calculated. It was as if a chess game that was clear in the heart had suddenly been ruthlessly slapped a few times. It was a complete mess, a complete mess, a complete mess. Ha ha! Interesting. Too interesting. Tong Tian flicked the immortal slaying sword and laughed loudly. That guy's really too interesting. Everyone knew that this was caused by Liu, but no one could do anything to him, because no one could find Liu. This is fair. You are in control of everything, and everything is clear in your heart. You can see the past and the future at a glance, and see through the ins and outs. Then how can I play with you? In one breath, it gave out thousands of opportunities and created thousands of protagonists. With the power of the system's proof of chaos, even the sages in the second step of chaos could not see through the ins and outs of these opportunities. In this way, thousands of variables were born, and the heavens was in chaos. Everyone was in the dark. This was fair. Actually, I can also let the system cover up my heaven's will so that they can't calculate it. But this method can only be used now. Previously, when the heavens was not in chaos, all living things were calculated by the sages. Only Liu could not be calculated. This was a black dot on a piece of white paper. It was too conspicuous. Now, I'm the son of the Green Mountain sect's leader. Seeing that your aptitude is not bad, and I still lack a servant, I will be generous and accept you. Kowtow and thank me. A young man with an arrogant expression was driving a dazzling golden chariot. He looked down at Liu with a condescending gaze. Accept me as a servant? Liu laughed heartily. If you put it that way, I won't feel any pressure killing you. This arrogant second-generation immortal's expression stiffened. Just as he was about to attack, he discovered that he was completely unable to move. With the system concealing the heavenly secrets of this place, when the heavenly secrets are in chaos, no one knows what happened here. So it's you. Liu chuckled. His body exploded, transforming into a mass of primal chaos that rushed into the body of this arrogant second-generation immortal. With a flash of light, this second-generation immortal was replaced by Liu. Karma, fate, and everything about the second generation of immortals had all turned into Liu's identity card in the primeval world. Borrowing your name, bearing your karma. When I attain Tao in the future, I will return you a fortuitous encounter. Using someone else's identity card was a huge cause and effect. Although this karma was concealed by the system, only Liu himself could see it. However, once he used this alias to attain the Tao, he would definitely have to repay this karma. Green Mountain Sect? A small sect in the Yongzhou region of the Southern Viewing Department State? Seeing this second-generation immortal's appearance, Liu thought he had a great background. He didn't expect it to be a small, mediocre sect. Fortunately, this guy's luck is not bad. Among the countless futures, there are also some possibilities for him to soar into the sky. So, I will use this alias to fight with the saints in the primeval world. Sitting in the carriage, Liu absorbed all the memories of this second-generation immortal, turning himself into an exact copy of this second-generation immortal. The cultivation realms in this world are refining essence into qi, refining qi into spirit, refining the spirit into void, refining the void into the Tao. He reached out and patted the carriage. Brilliant golden light surged. 2 golden flood dragons pulled the carriage and flew out, rushing towards the Green Mountain Sect's encampment. The head of the Green Mountain Sect is called Li Qingshan. The son of the head is called Liu. It has the same pronunciation as my name. This is the will of the heavens. Liu laughed out loud. However, this Liu's cultivation was only in the divinity state. In this primeval world, where immortals were inferior to dogs, where golden immortals were everywhere, and where pre-saints couldn't shake the divinity state, was like an ant. Only those who returned to void could become immortals, and they were considered immortals. Between the return to void and the unification of the Tao, above the immortals were the earth immortals, heaven immortals, Tai true immortals, great all-embracing golden immortals, pre-saints, and finally the saints. These early cultivation realms are meaningless to me. I'll use this time to slowly study what the primordial purple energy is. Sitting leisurely in the carriage, Liu picked up the wine bottle on the table in front of him, poured a cup of wine, and slowly tasted it. Not bad. Beautiful and luxurious clothes. This Liu really knows how to enjoy life. Speaking of enjoyment, Liu expressed that this kind of life, I also liked it very much. The 2 golden flood dragons pulled the carriage and flew all the way. Soon, they had flown over 10,000 miles and were not too far away from the Green Mountain Sect's encampment. Pervert, give me your life. Liu was leisurely drinking wine and making merry when he suddenly heard an inexplicable angry roar in front of him. A sword light shot up to the sky, slashing down at Liu's head. The incomparably sharp sword light tore through the sky, sharp and unstoppable. The one who attacked with the sword was a young girl in a white dress with a face full of grief and indignation. Her teary eyes, the expression of gnashing her teeth, and the resolute attack made Liu have a headache. Pervert! Pervert? With a helpless and bitter smile on his face, Liu secretly sighed. This is the after effect of the second generation of immortals. The young girl in the white dress was called Qi Ying. She was also a disciple of the Green Mountain Sect and the junior sister of the second generation of immortals. The second generation of immortals had coveted Qi Ying for a long time. Just yesterday, the second generation of immortals stole the immortal treasure, binding fairy tassel, from his father's treasure house, tied Qi Ying up, and carried her into the room, ready to take action. Before he could succeed, Qi Ying's master came to the door and rescued Qi Ying. This time, the second generation of immortals actually came out to avoid disaster and run away. It was just that he was unlucky and ran into Liu's hands. Really troublesome. With a wave of his hand, the long sword at his waist came out of its scabbard with a clang sound. A green and verdant sword light flashed, whistling and spinning, and the sword light turned into a verdant and tall pine tree. The heavy snow pressed down on the pine tree, and the pine tree was tall and straight. With a slash of the sword, it actually showed a tenacious and unyielding, strong and upright sword intent. Ding! With a light sound, the sharp sword light of the young girl in a white dress was instantly swept away by the pine tree sword intent. Pine tree sword intent? You pervert, despicable and shameless pervert, how? How could you use the strong and upright pine tree sword intent? The young girl in a white dress was shocked and sad. She was so angry that her eyes were red and her whole body was trembling. Pervert, you took advantage of me. I can't kill you, and I don't have the face to live in this world. In my next life, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. The young girl in a white dress roared mournfully. She pulled the sword back and stabbed it fiercely toward her own heart. Damn, you even committed suicide? Liu hurriedly leaped up and rushed towards the young girl. Because of the karma, Liu became Liu. This matter, naturally, it had to be resolved. Will Joker's method work? Liu grabbed the long sword that was going to stab his chest. Even though the blade pierced his palm and was dripping with blood, he grabbed the sword and pointed it at his own chest. He looked at Qi Ying with full eyes. Once there was a sincere love. If I have to add a time limit, I hope it's 10,000 years. Pervert, go to hell. It seemed that Joker's words had no effect at all. Qi Ying roared, raised the sword, and stabbed it fiercely toward Liu. Joker, your method won't work. Liu wailed in his heart. He forgot that Joker was still a single dog in the end. Chapter 1302. The Supreme Treasure's flirting skill was useless. The girl in white was filled with grief and indignation. She stabbed out with her sword resolutely. To act cool, Liu had copied the Supreme Treasure, placing the sword before his chest. When the girl stabbed down, Liu was basically committing suicide. Although the chaotic body could completely ignore attacks like this. Liu could, but Liu could not. No, stop. The moment the girl in white stabbed out furiously, a series of cries rang out in the space beside her. With a flash of light, a woman in white and a middle-aged man in azure robes appeared. Buzz, a light screen enveloped Liu's body, protecting him firmly within the light screen. Sure enough, she's taken action. With Liu's cultivation, he could obviously tell that someone was hiding on the side a long time ago. Otherwise, he really would not have used the Supreme Treasure's ability. Otherwise, if Qi Ying had stabbed him, Liu would have had to endure the attack if he did not expose his chaotic body. Inger, why are you so foolish? As her clothes fluttered, a beautiful woman in white appeared beside Qi Ying. She extended her arms and hugged Qi Ying before shooting a frosty glance at Liu. Master! Qi Ying collapsed in the woman's arms and burst into tears. Senior brother, I'll take Inger back first. The woman in white looked at the middle-aged man in azure robes before shooting a cold glance at Liu. With a wave of her hand, she shot off as a white streak of light. Only Liu and the green-robed middle-aged man were left. The middle-aged man in azure robes was obviously the sect master of the Green Mountain sect, Li Qingshan. Vile spawn. Li Qingshan's face darkened. He pointed at Liu and bellowed furiously, "You've done something so evil, yet you still have the face to return? What the fuck?" Liu became extremely depressed when he heard the scolding. All he could do was lower his head and remain silent. Piss off. With a wave of his hand, Li Qingshan pointed at Liu and bellowed out again. You're vicious. You're the first one who dares to lecture me like this. His Majesty Emperor Yu, who had run amok in the universe, was lectured like a grandson. He could only lower his head and flee in a sorry state. The gloominess and awkwardness were simply unspeakable. Driving the carriage into the air, Liu hurriedly left for the Green Mountain sect. Liu was Liu's father. He had taken on this identity and accepted this karma. All Liu could do was endure it silently. What was the saying? Even if he had to hold back his tears, he still had to finish the call. This kid has actually improved? Seeing Li Yu flee in a hurry, a smile suddenly appeared on the furious Li Qingshan's face. The green pine sword intent is firm and upright. That's not something evil people can comprehend. It seems that although Yu is mischievous, his nature isn't bad. But, Qi Li Qingshan shook his head again. It's unavoidable for young people to be impulsive and make mistakes. As long as I discipline him strictly, Yu can still become something. Stroking his beard with a smile, Li Qingshan nodded. Since he's only interested in Qi, let's give him what he wants. That way, it'll be perfectly resolved. At this moment, Li Yu still had no idea that Li Qingshan was planning on finding him a girlfriend. If he knew, Li would probably spit out a mouthful of blood. Do I look like a pickup hero? Of course, that was just a joke. In reality, Qi had only been tied up and dragged into Li Yu's room. Before he could do anything, Qi master had rushed over and saved her. So this is the Green Mountain sect? The golden WYRM carriage flew along. After flying for 500 kilometers, a mountain range shrouded in immortal clouds appeared before Li Yu. The rolling mountains were surrounded by mighty rivers. Green mountains and clear waters intersected as immortal clouds and auspicious light intersected. It was a beautiful sight. The primordial world really is a good place. Even the base of a small sect can be a holy land for cultivation with such abundant spiritual qi. Li Yu nodded in admiration. He drove the carriage and rushed towards the base of the Green Mountain sect with a rumble. The golden WYRM roared, and the resplendent carriage smashed through the clouds with a rumble. It barged through the mountain gate aggressively and ostentatiously, whistling over the heads of the passing disciples and rushing straight into the Green Mountain sect's Yuxia Peak. Li Yu? He's back. Didn't they say he caused great trouble and angered Peak Lord Bai Yin? He's back so soon? Seeing Li Yu's extremely ostentatious and arrogant behavior, the disciples of the Green Mountain sect were both surprised and furious. Li Yu, on a mountain to the east of the Green Mountain sect, a young cultivator in embroidered robes saw the carriage shoot through the air, and a smear of resentment appeared in his eyes. You're actually still alive? You've actually returned? The young man in embroidered robes snorted coldly with a sunken expression before turning around and entering his dwelling. This is my cave abode. After the carriage landed in front of the palace on the top of Yuxia Peak, Li Yu walked into the palace after handing over the carriage to the palace servant. This Yuxia Peak was the dwelling of that second-generation immortal. As the young master of the sect, the second-generation immortal had a high status in the Green Mountain sect. The entire palace was full of spiritual energy, and it was located on top of the few spiritual springs in the Green Mountain sect. For regular cultivators, this is indeed a holy place for cultivation. Unfortunately, it's meaningless to me. What you needed was the primordial purple qi to achieve the second step of chaos. Everything else was meaningless to Li Yu. What is the primordial purple qi? Li Yu never thought that the primordial violet qi was some kind of qi, but he could not figure out what the primordial violet qi was. Who knew what it meant when it was just a pronoun? Take the word curtain, for example. Can you understand what it means? As a result, I still have to find a way to find the strand of primordial purple qi that vanished after Hongyan died. This would definitely be a difficult mission. There were definitely many people who cared about Hongyun's strand of primordial purple qi. It would definitely be extremely difficult to steal the primordial purple qi from these people. More importantly, Hongyun had been dead for countless years, yet no one had found the strand of primordial purple qi after all this time. Where was he supposed to find it? Fortunately, I've given away thousands upon thousands of fortuitous encounters, which is equivalent to thousands upon thousands of eyes and ears. It might not be very effective, but it's still better than searching around by myself. Li shook his head helplessly. All he could do was think about it at length. Come see me in the Palace of Green Mountain immediately. At this moment, the voice of the sect master suddenly rang out from a jade pendant on Li Yu's waist. You want me to go to the Palace of Green Mountain? Li Yu frowned. He stood up and made his way out of the Yuxia Hall. He felt helpless inside. Li Qingshan wanted him to go because of the matter of the second-generation immortal molesting Qiying. The second-generation immortal had been killed by Li Yu, so he could only take the blame for this. I hope the punishment isn't too heavy. If it embarrasses I too much, I might be forced to defect. His Majesty Emperor Yu is only borrowing an identity card, so he obviously would not mistreat himself too much because of this. Chapter 1303. Let's go see what's going on first. Releasing a streak of light with a wave of his hand, Li Yu rose up on his sword, flying towards the main hall of the Green Mountain sect, the Green Mountain Hall. The Green Mountain sect was an orthodox Taoist sect. They all practiced the orthodox Taoist path of Jindan. They used the Taoist path as their body and techniques as their tools. The art of controlling swords was also an orthodox legacy in the Green Mountain sect. The flying sword shot through the air, and a while later, Li Yu landed in front of an ancient, towering hall. This was the Green Mountain Hall. The Green Mountain Hall sat between a verdant, towering pine tree. The rustling of the pine trees made the ancient hall seem less dignified, but it gave off a tranquil, otherworldly feeling. It's actually not a joint trial of the three halls? Li Yu walked into the Green Mountain Hall, but he discovered that the only person there was the sect master, Li Qingshan. You've come. Seeing Li Yu walk in, Li Qingshan nodded. He pointed at a cushion in front of him and gestured towards Li Yu. Sit. I wonder. Sitting down on the cushion, Li Yu raised his head and looked at Li Qingshan. He was about to ask, but Li Qingshan waved his hand and interrupted him. How did you practice the green pine sword intent? Li Qingshan's face was cold. His eyes were like lightning as he stared at Li Yu closely. Li Yu was taken aback. Only then did he remember that he had actually used the green pine sword intent when he casually swung his sword in response to Qi Ying's sneak attack. The 10 swords of Green Mountain all had their mysteries. However, the green pine sword intent was a sword style of tenacity and uprightness. It was nothing for Li Yu to casually use this sword intent. However, Li Yu, the second generation of immortals, was arrogant, domineering, and unruly. What part of him had tenacity and uprightness to do with someone like that? What the hell? I actually accidentally exposed a flaw like that. Li Yu shook his head and sighed. However, he had to fix it now that something had gone wrong. You won't let go of the Green Mountain, rooted in the broken rock. You'll remain firm even after thousands of blows, no matter where you go. It was hard to say whether he was firm and upright, but wasn't it the specialty of the second generation of immortals? He couldn't find a suitable excuse at the moment, so he could only use this to make up the numbers, stubbornly refusing to let go of the Green Mountain. When Li Qingshan heard Li Yu's poem, the corner of his lips twitched violently. He didn't see any perseverance in the poem, nor did he see any indomitable spirit. Thinking about Li Yu's infatuation with Qi Ying, she recalled how he had held the sword in his hand and said affectionately, "There was once a true love." As a result, what Li Qingshan saw in the poem was Li Yu being infatuated with Qi Ying. He clung to her relentlessly, stubbornly refusing to let go of the green hills. Then, he even said, even after thousands of setbacks, he still remains firm, no matter what the wind blows from the east, west, and north. Green pine, sword intent, can actually be cultivated like this? Even Li Qingshan's hands trembled. Being infatuated with a beautiful woman, resolutely using force, not hesitating to take risks, not hesitating to break the rules of the sect. Was this also called perseverance? Pestering and not giving up even after being stabbed by a sword? Could this be considered as indomitable? How could he master the pine sword intent like this? Even the ancestral master's coffin would collapse, right? Huff, huff. Only after exhaling deeply a few times did Li Qingshan settle down. His gaze towards Li Yu was rather helpless and speechless. Li Qingshan looked at Li Yu and opened his mouth. Suddenly, he had no idea what to say. The sword intent was the soul transformation intent. With the pine sword intent, Li Yu's path to soul transformation was already very clear. As long as he mastered the sword intent and attached his soul, he would be able to reach the virtual realm and ascend to immortality. As the sect leader, his son's cultivation had improved greatly, and he had a successor. This was a good thing. This was something that Li Qingshan could be proud of, something that he could be gratified by. The problem is, why is your method of breaking through so awkward? As Qi practitioners and cultivators, we should purge our hearts of desires and abstain from doing anything. Only then can we achieve the great path. Even if we do become partners, we'll support each other on the path of cultivation. We can't become engrossed in love. After a moment of thought, Li Qingshan finally organized his words. He used the principles of the great path of cultivation to persuade his son, who had broken through in an extremely strange manner. There are 3,000 great paths, but there is no difference between them. Hearing that, Liu became accustomed to being an old man, so his bad habit of being a good teacher emerged again. He began to refute Li Qingshan's one-sided understanding of the great path. The 4 elements of Buddhism are all emptiness. Nirvana and nirvana can prove the great path. Taoism can also prove the great path with purity and inaction. The virtue of the human emperor can prove the great path. The demon ancestor can also prove the great path with the destruction of all life. Why can't love prove the great path? You have to understand that the union of yin and yang is the natural order of things. Preposterous logic. A bunch of nonsense. As soon as he opened his mouth to lecture him, Liu's preposterous logic rendered him speechless. All Li Qingshan could do was prove the great path with strength and directly suppress him. Why is it preposterous logic? If emotionlessness is the great path, why isn't affection also the great path? Haven't you heard that those who reach the apex of affection reach the apex of the sword? Li Yu, who had sunk into an academic dispute, had already entered a state of mind. The 10 swords of Green Mountain all have their own mysteries and differences. Do you only see tenacity and uprightness in the green pine sword style, but you can't see the endless entanglement? With a wave of his hand, the sword in his hand flew out of its sheath. The sword whistled through the air, and a tall, upright pine tree appeared in the light. This is tenacity and uprightness. However, how can a tree be without roots? With the turn of the sword light, the upright pine tree turned into tangled roots. Why a firm and upright pine tree? You don't look at its straight and upright stature. You only look at its entangled roots. Li Qingshan's head suddenly ached. The Eastly sword style is the same. He extended his hand and beckoned. The verdant, green sword light suddenly shuddered, suddenly turning into a blooming golden chrysanthemum. Cold and cold, graceful and unconventional, the only one sober when everyone else is drunk. The Eastly sword style was the sword of a hermit. You only see the drifting, otherworldly nature, the intent of a hermit. Why can't you see its wildness and tyranny? The sword light shuddered, and a long cry drifted out. When autumn arrives, on the 8th of the 9th month, I'll kill 100 flowers after they bloom. The sword whistled through the air. The drifting, otherworldly sword of a hermit suddenly became a sword of endless killing that was extremely wild and tyrannical. Sword of winter plum blossom. You only see its arrogant frost and battle snow, its supreme aloofness, but you can't see its arrogance. The plum blossoms bloomed, and the supreme aloofness suddenly became arrogant. This is the serene orchid sword style. You understand its tranquility and elegance, but do you know about self-admiration? The sword Qi was like orchids, and the tranquility and elegance of the sword intent became self-admiration and arrogance. You only see the modest, gentlemanly nature of the verdant bamboo sword style. You only see the upright, but you can't see its vanity. The green lotus sword style. With that, Liu, who had entered a state of academic discussion, demonstrated the sword intent of the 10 swords of Green Mountain consecutively before Li Qingshan. He demonstrated the sword intent of the 10 swords of Green Mountain consecutively before Li Qingshan, stunning him. W. Since when did you practice so many sword intents? At that moment, Li Qingshan thought of Li Yu's arrogance and tyranny from before. He thought of Li Yu's selflessness, and he thought of Li Yu's lawlessness. So, that's where all the sword intents came from. Comprehending sword intent is a good thing, a great thing. The problem is, why is the method you use to comprehend sword intent so strange? Should I laugh? Or should I cry? Li Qingshan was at a loss. He did not even know when Li Yu had left. I'm away for a meeting today, so I'm sorry. Chapter 1304. To the extreme of love, to the extreme of the sword. A while later, Li Yu returned to his senses, but he discovered that Li Yu had already left before he knew it. You damn kid, I still haven't punished you. All right, Li Qingshan had no idea how to punish him anymore. Having fully comprehended the sword intent of the 10 swords of Green Mountain, Li Qingshan was already pleasantly surprised by Li Yu's cultivation progress. Of course, this was under the premise that he ignored the method he used to comprehend sword chi. Thinking up to there, Li Qingshan felt his head ache slightly again. Don't tell me. The 10 swords of Green Mountain also contained something like that? Lifting up his sword, Li Qingshan sank into his thoughts. A proper sect master had been led into a ditch by Li Yu just like that. I'm not tricking you. Sword intent is the heart. The same sword technique can be explained from different angles. Li Yu left the hall of Green Mountain and returned to Jaded Glow Peak. Turning his head and glancing in the direction of the hall, Li Yu smiled. If you can comprehend your heart from this, your cultivation could take another step forward. With this identity, you could say I've repaid you for your karma. With that, Li Yu no longer paid any more attention to Li Qingshan. My main objective is to reach the second step of chaos. If I want to break through, I need primordial violet chi. I have no clue about this at all. Li Yu sat on the cushion and sank into his thoughts. Using the identity of the second generation of immortals, Li Yu had broken away from the surveillance of the saints. Li Yu could finally catch his breath and deal with everything calmly now. However, he had no clue about the crucial step of primordial violet chi at all. Hold on. Zhen Yuanzi was the one who told me about primordial violet chi. What he said must be true. Li Yu frowned slightly. I don't even know Zhen Yuanzi, so why would he go out of his way to tell me something so crucial? Zhen Yuanzi wants to avenge Hong Yun, but the enemy is too powerful, so he has no choice but to borrow my strength. Working together against the enemy? That might be a possibility, but there was no way to confirm it. I have no clue about primordial violet chi. I can't spend most of my energy on something as intangible as that. Reaching the second step of chaos should mainly focus on my own cultivation and comprehension. After making up his mind, Li Yu was ready to walk on two legs. The primordial violet chi continued to pay attention. He could not relax in his cultivation and comprehension. Then let's study the methods of the Green Mountain sect first. Since this world already had 8 saints who had reached the second step of chaos, then the cultivation methods of this world would more or less reflect the true meaning of the Great Tao. The Green Mountain sect mainly had 3 true inheritances of the Great Tao. The Sword Scripture of Green Mountain, the Evergreen Scripture, and the Scripture of Green Mountain. The Sword Script of Green Mountain was the 10 Swords of Green Mountain. Evergreen Scripture and Songshan Scripture were both chi refinement techniques. As the son of the sect master, Li Yu mainly practiced the Evergreen Scripture, and the 10 Swords of Green Mountain was merely a protective method. The Evergreen Scripture is endlessly growing and multiplying, and its aura is long-lasting. It does have some merit. With Li Yu's cultivation and knowledge, he naturally saw through the true meaning of the Evergreen Scripture at a glance. However, the inheritance of such a small sect was of little value to Li Yu. My chi refinement cultivation is the chi of heaven and earth and the chi of yin and yang. Matter and order fuse into one, define nature, and turn into chaos. This is the path I took to step into the second step of chaos. Liu had long understood this point. However, he lacked an opportunity. He lacked an opportunity to define nature and turn into chaos. Matter and order complement each other, and they are originally fused into one. However, fusing into one is not chaos, but the fusion of matter and order. In fact, any chi refinement technique absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth through a certain method and cultivated the spiritual chi of true essence in the body. In this process, spiritual chi was matter, and the chi refinement technique was order. The chi refinement cultivation of all cultivators could be seen as the fusion of matter and order in essence. I've already cultivated the body of chaos, and I've long comprehended the Tao of order returning to chaos of disorder. Logically speaking, I should be able to turn into chaos easily and step into the second step of chaos. His body, turning into chaos, allowed Liu to comprehend the Tao of turning matter into chaos. Along the way, he collected the laws of various worlds, allowing Liu to comprehend the Tao of order returning to chaos of disorder. Combining the two, this was the Tao of turning into chaos. Unfortunately, I still can't perfect it. I'm still missing something, unable to truly define nature and turn into chaos. What I'm missing is the primordial violet vapor. What exactly is the primordial violet vapor? What am I missing? Young master, are you there? At this moment, a call suddenly came from outside the hall. A little fatty in a brocade robe stood on his tiptoes and waved outside the door. This is Wang Xin. Looking up and seeing the little fatty outside the door, Liu thought for a moment and found the little fatty's identity from Liu's memories. Wang Xin, the son of Green Mountain sect elder Wang Yu, Liu's junior brother and friend. Both of them were the second generation of immortals, the scourge of Green Mountain sect. With Liu as the leader and Wang Xin as the support, they gathered a group of lackeys and caused chaos in Green Mountain sect. Third fatty, you're here? Come in quickly. Liu smiled and waved at Wang Xin outside the door. Young master, I'm here to deliver a message. Wang Xin hurriedly ran into the hall and sat down opposite Liu. He picked up the wine bottle and took a big gulp. Gasping for breath, he said to Liu, Young master, your matter has been exposed. Zhang Yulin has exposed your matter. Chui by Peak Master is coming for you. Young master, run quickly, or you're dead. Zhang Yulin, Chui by Peak Master? What did I do? Liu searched through his memories, but he couldn't find anything that said he was dead meat. He looked at Wang Xin in confusion. Yes, that's it. Young master, your idea is good. Don't admit it even if you beat me to death. Remember, don't admit it even if you beat me to death. Wang Xin nodded in appreciation, then cupped his hands and left. I'll go first. If someone sees me, I won't be able to get away. Don't blame this brother for not helping you. This time, you're in big trouble. Remember, don't admit it even if you beat me to death. With that, Wang Xin turned and ran, disappearing like a wisp of smoke. I don't even know what I did. Liu was stunned for a long time. He went back and forth in Liu's memories several times, but couldn't find any dead matter. Liu, get out here for this seat. A moment later, a middle-aged man with an ashen face landed at the entrance of the hall, roaring at Liu in anger. This man was the Chui by Peak Master that Wang Xin mentioned, Elder Zheng Hong of the Green Mountain sect, in charge of punishment. Martial Uncle Zheng, what's going on? Liu stood up and walked out of the hall with a wave of bewilderment in his heart. What's going on? You evil creature! How could you be so vicious? With a furious roar, Zheng Hong reached out and grabbed Liu. Let's go. Go tell your father. Picking up Liu, Zheng Hong took to the air and flew towards the Green Mountain Palace. Chapter 1305. What's going on? Even now, Liu still had no idea what had happened. Zheng Hong had captured him. With his cultivation, Liu could obviously fight back easily, but the problem was that his identity did not possess such cultivation. All he could do was let Zheng Hong capture him and take him to the Hall of Green Mountain. Senior brother, Li Yu is here. Zheng Hong brought Li Yu to the Hall of Green Mountain. Currently, many people were already seated in the hall. Apart from the sect master, there was Wang Xian's father, Wang Yu, Qi Ying's master, Lin Shi, Zheng Hong, and an elder with the surname of Zhang. The sect master and elders of the Green Mountain sect were all present. Yuval Spawn kneeled down. Seeing Li Yu arrive, Li Yu was furious. He slammed the table with a bang and stared at Li Yu coldly. His eyes were filled with anger and helplessness. You want to kneel down? You have to tell me what's going on at the very least, right? He was just borrowing an identity. Li Yu had never thought about being mistreated here. Kneeling down, His Majesty Emperor Yu had never done anything like that before. What's going on? You don't know what you've done? Li Qingshan slammed his hand down on the table again. With a bang, even the table was smashed to pieces. Are you still not going to confess? What crime have I committed? Is it about junior sister Qiying? Li Yu racked his brains, but apart from molesting Qiying, he really could not think of anything else. How long had it been since he returned to the sect? How long had it been since he left the Hall of Green Mountain? He had not done anything at all. How dare you quibble? Li Yu suddenly stood up. He was furious. He extended his hand and was about to strike Li Yu. Senior brother, please don't do anything. At this moment, Zheng Hong extended his hand and stopped Li Qingshan. Junior brother Zheng, don't stop me. This vile spawn is lawless. He's committed such a great crime. Even beating him to death would be a light punishment. I am the sect leader, yet I failed to discipline this unfilial son. I am ashamed to face junior martial brother Zhang and my fellow disciples. Li Qingshan trembled with anger. He turned around and shot a glance at Li Yu. Bastard, why don't you kneel down? Why aren't you kowtowing to Martial Uncle Zhang and apologizing? Martial Uncle Zhang. Li Yu looked at the elder, surnamed Zhang, who sat to Li Qingshan's right in confusion. This man was the external affairs elder of the Green Mountain sect, the father of the Zhang Yulin mentioned by Wang Xian. But Li Yu couldn't figure out when he had offended this elder Zhang. I don't even know what you're talking about. What crime are you admitting to? How could you do something like kowtow and apologize? You still dare to be stubborn. Li Qingshan still wanted to curse, but Zheng Hong stood up and stopped him. Senior brother sect master, let's ask him first. Zheng Hong nodded at Li Yu before turning around and looking at him coldly. Li Yu, do you still remember senior brother Zhang's disciple, Tan Yi? Tan Yi? I remember. What's wrong? Li Yu did not remember this Tan Yi, but Li Yu had an extremely deep impression of him. The day before Li Yu molested Qi Ying, he had taught this Tan Yi a vicious lesson. Tan Yi is dead. At this moment, Elder Zhang stood up and stared at Li Yu furiously. My disciple, Tan Yi, was beaten up viciously by you. He's heavily injured. Because he was afraid of your revenge, he didn't tell anyone, so he went into hiding. He did not receive treatment in time, so he died this morning. Li Yu was dumbfounded. He was filled with helplessness. What the hell? He had taken on the identity of a second-generation immortal. There really was far too much trouble. Before the first wave had even subsided, another wave had arisen. It was impossible to guard against. Normally, he would strut around and act like a tyrant, bullying his fellow disciples everywhere. He had even molested Qi Ying. His misdeeds were truly stained, enough to make one's hair stand on end. He had not even dealt with the matter of molesting Qi Ying, yet now another disciple had beaten to death. Li Yu suddenly wondered if he had chosen the wrong identity. Was it too late to return the goods now? Vile spawn, do you have anything else to say? Li Qingshan pointed at Li Yu furiously. Normally, you throw your weight around, but you've never committed a grave mistake. Now, not only have you molested Qi Ying, but you've even killed her. How did I give birth to a vile spawn like you? Reaching there, Li Qingshan took out the sect leader's talisman and looked at the elders. Juniors, I failed to teach my son properly, causing him to commit a grave mistake. I'm too ashamed to continue taking on the position of sect leader. I resign from the position of sect leader. Senior brother, you mustn't. Hearing that, all the elders were moved. They stood up in shock. My vile spawn has committed a grave mistake, but it's also because I've failed to teach him properly. By resigning from the position of sect leader, I can focus on disciplining my vile spawn. Juniors, please don't try to dissuade me. Li Qingshan let out a long sigh and glanced at Li Yu. His eyes were filled with helplessness, and there was some tiredness between his brows. This son of his really had worried him to death. Hold on. At this moment, Li Yu suddenly said, "You say Tan Yi died from his injuries after being beaten up by me. Do you have any proof?" Vile spawn, how dare you quibble? If it's not you, then who is it? Li Qingshan saw how Li Yu still refused to acknowledge his mistake, which made him utterly furious. Do you think I don't know whether someone will die for my actions? Li Yu raised his head and looked at Li Qingshan. He knocked the hilt of his sword. Others might not know about my cultivation with the sword, but you should know better, right? Li Qingshan was taken aback. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes. He looked at Li Yu with some questions in his eyes. Li Yu nodded slightly. Junior brother Zheng, have you examined Tan Yi's corpse? After personally witnessing Li Yu's cultivation with his sword, Li Qingshan began to believe Li Yu a little more. Due to Li Yu's arrogance and despotism the entire time, Li Qingshan was under the impression that Li Yu had caused trouble again. Now that he had calmed down and thought about it, he also discovered that something was off. No one who could become a sect leader was an idiot. It was impossible for Li Qingshan to not know about framing others and scheming against each other. By framing Li Yu, they could strike a blow to the sect leader's prestige before taking over the position of sect leader. It was very easy for him to make this connection. Headmaster, I saw it with my own eyes. Tanny died under the pine tree sword technique. Elder Zhang's face was gloomy. The sword wound on Tan Yi's body still carries a trace of sword intent. Hiding the sword intent and delaying the eruption. What good move. The pine sword intent. Li Yu laughed heartily. I don't know who wants to frame me, but my azure pine sword intent isn't something that anyone can imitate. Let's examine Tan Yi's corpse on the spot. The second generation immortal Li Yu had not practiced any pine sword intent at all. Only after Li Yu assumed this identity did he reveal the pine sword intent when he blocked Qi Ying's strike. Someone must have learned about this and purposefully framed him. Of all things, why use the pine sword intent? My pine sword intent will scare you to death. Li Yu sneered inside. However, he did pay some attention to this matter. There were not a lot of people who knew Li Yu had practiced the pine sword intent. Examine it on the spot? All right. Li Qingshan also understood. Li Yu's pine sword intent. That was the endlessly entangled pine sword intent. It was unique in the entire Green Mountain sect. No one could fake it. A while later, Li Qingshan brought everyone to where Tan Yi's corpse was. Senior brother, please take a look. There are no other wounds on Tan Yi's body. Only a wound from Li Yu's sword. The fatal sword intent came from the sword wound on my chest. Removing the white cloth, Elder Zhang pointed at the wound on Tan Yi's chest and said to everyone, "There are no other wounds, and it's the pine sword intent again. If it's not Li Yu, who else could it be?" "It's not him." Li Qingshan saw the sword intent on Tan Yi and shook his head with a smile. "My son's pine sword intent isn't like this." Senior brother, even if Li Yu is your son, you can't shield him like this, right? It's clearly him. Li Yu's pine sword intent isn't like this. The pine sword intent is a straight and unyielding sword intent. So what else can it be? Elder Zhang roared out with a sunken face. You're wrong. My pine sword intent isn't a straight and unyielding sword intent. Li Yu sneered and drew his sword. A verdant streak of light rushed into the sky. However, the sword intent in the streak of light was not just straight and unyielding. It also possessed an endlessly entangled state. Seeing Li Yu's sword intent, everyone looked like they had seen a ghost. Why did the unyielding green pine sword essence in your hands give birth to a sense of endless entanglement and pestering? Junior brothers, my son is innocent. This has nothing to do with him. Li Qingshan's eyes were filled with relief. Tomorrow, the third watch will resume. Chapter 1306. Who killed Tan Yi? Who tried to frame my son? With Li Yu's strange pine sword intent, he could no longer be blamed for the crime. Li Qingshan spoke boldly and with great might. Senior brother headmaster, we have to get to the bottom of this. As the elder in charge of punishment, investigating this matter was his duty, so he obviously had a responsibility. Indeed, there's actually someone bold enough to murder Tan Yi and frame Li Yu. No matter who it is, we won't tolerate it. The elders all expressed their opinions. Even Elder Zhang apologized to Li Qingshan and also expressed his righteous indignation that he would investigate and punish the culprit severely. However, there were many people who practiced the pine sword style in the Green Mountain sect, but the people who had practiced the pine sword intent were all present. Apart from Li Yu, the other disciples of the sect either had not practiced the pine sword intent or they had not practiced the pine sword intent. There were no other suspects. There must be a traitor hiding in the Green Mountain sect with ill intentions. Although Li Qingshan had also suspected the elders present, he did not have direct evidence, so he could not include these elders as suspects and interrogate them. All he could do was find a hidden traitor to take the blame. As for what happened in secret, Li Qingshan would not let it go. It was even less likely for Li Yu to let it go. I still have great use for this identity, so I can't abandon it so easily. I obviously have to eliminate enemies with this identity one by one. Li Yu hid his identity so that he could fool everyone and break free from the surveillance of the saints. His current identity was Li Yu's alternate identity in this world, a method to avoid the surveillance of the saints. As a result, he could not expose his identity as Li Yu so easily, nor could he abandon it so easily. A Li Yu who conformed to the rules of the great desolate world possessed luck. Even if his strength grew very quickly due to coincidence, it was still within the normal rules. Only like that could Li Yu have the opportunity to contend against the saints. Don't worry, Yu. I will definitely find the true culprit. After comforting Li Yu, Li Qingshan and the elders all dispersed. This matter had come to an end for now. The investigation of the truth had all been carried out in secret. So fierce. Ha! Li Yu curled his lips and sneered in his heart. You have to think of a way to find the real culprit, but I don't have to go through so much trouble. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Li Yu had seen through time and saw through karma. Scheming against me means that you have formed a karmic bond with me. Unless you step into the primal chaos realm as well, everything will be within my sight. It was clear at a glance. Following the karma, he saw the past. Li Yu saw how Tan Yi died. This morning, shortly after Li Yu returned to the Green Mountain sect, Tan Yi, who was recuperating in the cave, welcomed a guest. A handsome young cultivator in a brocade robe came to Tan Yi's cave and inserted a wisp of pine sword intent into the sword wound on Tan Yi's chest in the name of checking on him. Li Yu, how can you escape such a serious crime as molesting Qiying? I'd like to see how you escape this time. The brocade robe cultivator said viciously before turning around and leaving Tan Yi's cave. All he left behind was Tan Yi, who had died from the explosion of sword intent. He collapsed on the ground with remaining grievances. It's him? It's actually him? The brocade-robed young man was Elder Zhang's son, Zhang Yulin. Who was Zhang Yulin? In the Green Mountain sect, Zhang Yulin and Li Yu just happened to be two extremes. Li Yu was arrogant and despotic. He had a terrible reputation. Not only was Zhang Yulin's cultivation profound, being the first senior brother of the Green Mountain sect, but he was also modest, generous, and upright. He was well received by the entire Green Mountain sect. He was basically a role model. You're a great traitor, Zhang Yulin, so you're actually like this. Li Yu felt great disdain for people like him who seemed righteous on the surface, but were actually filled with evil intentions. Wasn't he just a living hypocrite? However, Li Yu has always been at odds with Zhang Yulin, but they've never directly clashed, let alone had any conflicts. What's his motive for framing Li Yu like this? Zhang Yulin was someone else's child. He had always been someone Li Yu used as a comparison and a target to educate him. An excellent student and a scoundrel were people from two different worlds. They had never crossed paths, nor did they come into conflict. So why had they suddenly become enemies? Is it because he knows Liu has also practiced sword intent and feels like he's a threat, which is why he's framing him and eliminating the threat? Liu shook his head with a smile. I've screwed over countless people, yet you've actually screwed me over, so don't blame me for dragging you to the bottom of the sea. Against someone as insignificant as Zhang Yulin, Liu could destroy him with a flick of his finger. However, he needed to hide his identity right now, so everything had to be within the scope of his abilities. Only then would he not attract the attention of the heavens. After all, now that Liu had broken free from surveillance, the Saints would definitely be searching the entire world for him. As long as he left behind even the slightest trace, it was not like the Saints could not do something like that. I'd rather kill 1,000 innocents than let a single one escape. I'll just use the methods of the second generation of immortals to deal with the enemies of the second generation of immortals. Liu chuckled. Since the second generation of immortals who've improved so much were so arrogant before, they obviously have to act insufferably arrogant now. A day passed. Early the next morning, Liu wore a set of luxurious, embroidered robes and a violet gold crown on his head. A glistening immortal sword hung from his waist, and he strode out of the dwelling with his head held high. If you want to practice the sword, you need to understand the sword first. The sword is not a blade. The blade is straight, without the curved edge of a blade. As a result, when we practice the sword, we need to know right from wrong. Only with an upright heart can we succeed in practicing the sword. As the first senior brother, Zhang Yulin was a role model for his fellow disciples everywhere. He was greatly valued by the sect. As a result, Zhang Yulin was the one who organized the disciples of the sect to practice every morning. Not only did Zhang Yulin personally demonstrate the sword techniques, he also explained the way of practicing the sword to his fellow disciples in detail. The disciples of the Azure Mountain sect were filled with admiration for Zhang Yulin. In fact, when Liu arrived at the East Peak Square, he happened to see Qi Ying standing by the side of the square. Her face was filled with infatuation as she looked admiringly at the high platform in the square. Zhang Yulin was in high spirits and had an extraordinary bearing. What the F***? No wonder Joker's method didn't work. So this girl is infatuated with a hypocrite like Zhang Yulin. Liu staggered up the stone steps with his crab steps and walked towards the square. Aya, little Ling, did you specially wait for me here because you knew I was coming? Huh. An arrogant and despotic second generation of immortals naturally had to have an arrogant and despotic look. If he did not tease Qi Ying when he saw her, it would not be in line with his character as a second generation of immortals. It's you? You. Shameless. Qi Ying, who was in the midst of her infatuation, suddenly heard Liu's frivolous teasing. She was shocked as anger, pain, and even fear appeared on her face. Are you looking at Zhang Yulin? Is that the reason why you rejected me? Liu looked up at Zhang Yulin on the mountain and curled his lips. His face was filled with rage. Who does Zhang Yulin think he is? How dare he steal my junior sister? See if I don't beat him to death. Defeat senior brother Zhang? Just you? Qi Ying glanced disdainfully at Liu. With your bit of cultivation, you aren't even fit to carry senior brother Zhang's shoes. Is that so? Liu reached out his hand to draw his sword. Open your eyes and watch carefully. Chapter 1307. Qi Ying hated Liu very much. Seeing Liu overestimating himself and wanting to challenge Zhang Yulin, Qi Ying even took pleasure in his misfortune. Zhang Yulin was the #1 person of the younger generation. His cultivation had reached the late stage of the apotheosis realm, and he was worthy of the title of senior brother. Even though Liu had a breakthrough in swordsmanship and cultivated sword intent, he was still far behind Zhang Yulin in terms of cultivation and swordsmanship. Challenging Zhang Yulin this time was obviously asking for humiliation. Let senior brother Zhang teach you a lesson from me. You pervert, and help me vent my anger. Qi Ying gritted her teeth and looked at Liu. Thinking that he was about to be beaten to death by senior brother Zhang, Qi Ying felt very happy. Zhang Yulin, I'm here to settle accounts with you. Li Yu stepped into the square and pointed his sword at Zhang Yulin in front of all the disciples of the Green Mountain sect. Zhang Yulin, how dare you provoke me? You're courting death. The furious roar interrupted the ongoing teaching. Countless disciples of the Green Mountain sect in the square looked at Li Yu in shock. Li Yu? How dare he provoke senior brother Zhang? Ha! Did this demon lose his mind? How dare he provoke senior brother Zhang? He's courting death, isn't he? Great. Senior brother Zhang will definitely teach him a lesson and destroy this demon's arrogance. It's so satisfying. The disciples of the Green Mountain sect, who had been harmed by Li Yu, gloated and looked forward to Li Yu being beaten to a pulp by Zhang Yulin. Young Master Yu, what's wrong? You drank too much last night and hasn't woken up yet? Wang Xin and some of Li Yu's lackeys were stunned when they saw this situation. They looked at each other in dismay. Young Master Yu, you're courting death. You can't blame us for being disloyal. Zhang Yulin, we can't beat him, so we won't accompany you to die. Wang Xin shook his head speechlessly. He couldn't bear to see the following miserable situation. Wang Xin had some friendship with Li Yu. Those henchmen were completely clinging to the rich and powerful. How could they be loyal? If you want to die, then don't blame us for watching the show. Settle accounts? Provoke you? A bright light flashed in Zhang Yulin's eyes. He had some suspicions in his heart. Could it be that he knew that I killed Tan Yi and framed him? No. If he really knew, it wouldn't be him who came, but the elders of the sect. As he pondered, Zhang Yulin looked up and saw Qi Ying standing at the edge of the square. Realization dawned on him. So that's how it is? As expected, even if he had mastered the sword intent, he was still a pile of mud, unable to support the wall. You actually overestimated yourself and challenged me for a woman? Oof. I'll teach you a lesson then. You want to settle the score with me? I have nothing to do with people like you. What we have to settle. Zhang Yulin had the attitude of a gentleman does not associate with a villain. He glanced at Li Yu disdainfully and waved his hand. I don't have time to mess around with you. Don't disturb me when I'm practicing with my fellow disciples. Go fool around with your scoundrel friends. Nothing to do with you. Li Yu sneered and pointed at Qi Ying, who was standing outside the square. Then it's a dispute. Little junior sister Qi Ying is mine. Zhang Yulin, you dare to snatch my little junior sister away from me. You're courting death. Clang, with a shake of his sword, a verdant sword light soared into the sky. Li Yu looked up and roared, defeat Zhang Yulin, marry my little junior sister, and walk to the peak of life. Sword Qi soared into the sky, and his roar shook the sky. At this moment, everyone around the square who heard this sentence had a strange expression on their faces. A real hero should dare to draw his sword for the woman he loved. But this thing happened to Li Yu. It felt a little strange. Bastard. Yu. When Qi Ying heard Li Yu's ostentatious confession, she was angry and anxious. She was afraid that Zhang Yulin would misunderstand. Good. Young Master Yu is indeed a hero, a role model for our generation. Whoever dares to snatch the girl I flirt with, I'll chop him to death. Wang Xin raised his fist and roared loudly. However, Wang Xin was pessimistic about Li Yu's actions. Young Master Yu, if you do this, I'm afraid you'll suffer a double loss. So junior brother Li's swordsmanship has improved greatly. Not bad, not bad. Since junior brother Li is interested, then this elder brother will exchange pointers with you. Zhang Yulin looked at the sword light released by Li Yu. His face was full of praise. It was as if an elder saw that the younger generation finally had some prospects and was deeply gratified. You really have a talent for acting. Li Yu admired Zhang Yulin's hypocritical behavior. Li Yu boasted that his acting skills were outstanding. Compared to Zhang Yulin, he still lacked a natural, unrestrained state. Watch my sword. Li Yu was too lazy to talk nonsense with Zhang Yulin. He leaped up, raised his hand, and thrust out his sword. The green sword light suddenly exploded and turned into a dense green light. It was as if a rainstorm had enveloped Zhang Yulin. Pine needles rain? Junior brother's pine sword technique is indeed not shallow. Zhang Yulin nodded with a smile. The long sword in his hand trembled, and a verdant sword light also rushed out. Although it was also verdant, The sword light in Zhang Yulin's hand was not the pine sword technique, but the emerald bamboo sword technique. The bamboo shadow swayed, and bamboo leaves scattered, and scattered. Pa 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 pa. A burst of raindrops fell, and the pine needles and bamboo leaves kept colliding, annihilating each other. The two of them exchanged a move, and they were evenly matched. It's obvious that senior brother Zhang went easy on him. Li Yu's swordsmanship is far inferior to senior brother Zhang's. How can they be evenly matched? Yes, it must be so. Seeing Li Yu and Zhang Yulin's sword exchange, the people in the square were shocked. Then they thought of the reason. It must be that senior brother Zhang did not use his full strength and was just testing his sword. To be able to block my sword, your emerald bamboo sword technique is not bad. Li Yu looked up at Zhang Yulin and raised the long sword in his hand. Then take my sword. Clang! With a shake of his wrist, the long sword in his hand burst out a shrill sword sound. Bite the green mountain and don't relax. Take root in the broken rock. Even after thousands of blows, you are still strong, regardless of the wind. With a long cry, the emerald sword light suddenly rushed up, and in the midst of the emerald light, a towering green pine appeared in midair. Hua hua. In a trance, there seemed to be bursts of pine sounds like a raging tide, upright and unyielding, with awe-inspiring momentum. This was the pine sword intent. Sword intent? Li Yu actually mastered the sword intent. Seeing this scene, the Green Mountain sect disciples in the square were all shocked and exclaimed, "Humph! Even if he mastered the pine sword intent, so what? The beginner's pine sword intent is far inferior to senior brother Zhang's emerald bamboo sword intent." Qi Ying had long known that Li Yu had mastered the pine sword intent, but she knew even more clearly that Zhang Yulin's sword intent was stronger than Li Yu's. But why do I feel a sense of joy when I see them fighting so fiercely for me? This feeling was very good, and Qi Ying seemed to be a little intoxicated. Well, a woman like Qi Ying in the future would be a green tea. Chapter 1308. It turns out that junior brother has mastered the green pine sword intent. Congratulations. Zhang Yulin nodded with appreciation, but he sneered in his heart. You dare to challenge me when you've just mastered the sword intent. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Then, I'll teach you a lesson. When you're at your strongest, when you're at your proudest, I'll hit you hard and leave a shadow in your heart. I'll bury the devil in your heart and make you unable to break through the realm and reach the profound divinity realm for the rest of your life. With your mind injured and your state of mind unable to be perfect, I'll see how you can reach the profound divinity realm. Junior brother Li, good sword technique. I'm itching to test it out. Junior brother, be careful. It seemed to be an open greeting, but in fact, it was an excuse Zhang Yulin found in advance. It's because junior brother's sword technique is extraordinary that I can only try my best. Because my cultivation hasn't reached the profound divinity realm, I can't control it for a while. I'm really sorry. With a stab, the sword light rushed to the sky. Rustle, rustle, the bamboo shadow swayed, and a straight green bamboo rose to the sky. It was upright, modest, and upright like a modest gentleman. The perfect style, the sword intent like a modest gentleman, but it also had a kind of firmness that pierced the sky and pressed forward courageously. Modest gentleman? Ha! Interesting. Interesting. Seeing Zhang Yulin's sword, Li raised his eyebrows, and a light flashed in his eyes. He thought in his heart, as expected, as expected. At first, Li was wondering why Zhang Yulin could cover up the green pine sword intent so tightly without leaving any trace. After seeing this sword, Li already knew the answer. Zhang Yulin's green bamboo sword had a trace of hypocrisy in the sword intent. The bamboo looked green and tall, but it was only shiny on the surface. It was hollow inside. From this point, one could understand the hypocrisy of the green bamboo sword technique. With this hypocrisy covering up, Zhang Yulin's green pine sword technique was hidden in the hypocrisy. Then, I'll give you a hard one. As long as I break your hypocrisy, show your true form, and expose the green pine sword intent, you, the murderer, can't escape. This was the reason why Liu looked for Zhang Yulin. How could Liu have so much time to deal with such a small character? The earlier he settled it, the earlier he could focus on the second step of chaos. Boom! The pine tree and the green bamboo collided with each other, emitting a green light that filled the sky. Sword chi erupted violently. Streaks of silk-like green sword light burst out from where the green pines and green bamboos clashed, shattering the high platform where the two were fighting. To think that, the instant the sword chi collided, Zhang Yulin used a heavy hand. He originally wanted to give Liu a vicious blow, but he suddenly discovered that Liu's azure pine sword chi was even more tyrannical than he had expected. When the two sword chis collided, a violent backlash came, causing Zhang Yulin's face to change. Dong! 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 He retreated a few steps before finally stabilizing himself. This is impossible. This is impossible. Senior brother Zhang was actually beaten back? How is this possible? The crowd below the platform saw that Zhang Yulin was beaten back, and they were all shocked and in disbelief. Since when did that devil Liu have such a strong ability? If even senior brother Zhang was defeated, wouldn't all the disciples of the Green Mountain sect be trampled by him in the future? No way. Wang Exine opened his mouth wide and couldn't close it for a long time. Fighting for a girl can actually burst out such a strong power? How about I try it next time? Impossible. This is impossible. This scoundrel, this pervert, how can he be so strong? How can he beat senior brother Zhang? Qi Ying, who was at the edge of the square, was confused and didn't know what to feel. I underestimated you. A cold light flashed in Zhang Yulin's eyes, and the hidden killing intent became stronger. This kid hid so deeply? Could it be that his previous idleness and ignorance were all faked? His real strength is not inferior to mine? If that's the case, he is indeed my biggest obstacle. I want to take over the position of the sect leader. I want to control the Green Mountain sect, and he is the biggest obstacle. If that's the case, then I can only remove you, the rock in my way. Zhang Yulin's heart was cold, but his face was full of smiles, like a spring breeze. Junior brother, good swordsmanship. Such swordsmanship is no weaker than mine. I'm itching for a fight, so I'll have a good fight with you. Cut the crap. How could you not see what Zhang Yulin was planning? Wasn't it to kill, and then find an excuse that their strength was about the same, and that he couldn't hold back in time to severely injure Liu and damage his soul? Take my sword, lingering sorrow. The sword pierced out, and the pine tree stood tall and straight, towering majestically. However, this firm and unyielding azure pine sword intent suddenly gave birth to a strange concept of entanglement, endless entanglement, and pestering. The pine tree that appeared in the sword light suddenly burst out countless winding and twisted roots. The dense roots, big and small, were innumerable. These dense roots were entangled, twisted, and twisted. They couldn't be cut, and they were in a mess. However, these were not real roots, nor were they real tangles. Instead, they were incomparably sharp sword chi. Oh, what's this? Seeing Liu's inexplicable pine tree sword intent, everyone in the square was stunned. Is this possible? Is this also the pine tree sword intent? Is this possible? I've been prepared for this for a long time. Zhang Yulin had heard about Liu's strange pine tree sword intent from his father. So how could he not be prepared? Green bamboo has a shadow, and my square bamboo sword intent also has a bamboo shadow. Zhang Yulin sneered. With a shake of his long sword, he also revealed one of his trump cards. The upright and square green bamboo sword intent suddenly gave birth to a sense of darkness. Under the green bamboo formed by the sword light, a distorted shadow of a bamboo suddenly appeared. Liu's entangling green pine sword essence and the countless green pine roots were forcefully sucked in by this twisting, illusory shadow. The illusory shadow twisted and swallowed the entangled shadow. You dare to swallow eyes, sword intent? Liu smiled, since you expose your weakness, then don't blame I for stabbing you. With a shake of his wrist, the roots under the pine tree, which were twisted by the illusory bamboo shadow, suddenly straightened like a spring and shot out quickly. The dense roots, like thousands of steel wires, suddenly burst out, and the illusory, twisted shadow suddenly made a dense, piercing sound. Puff, 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 puff. In an instant, Zhang Yulin's twisted shadow, like a soap bubble, burst. The distorted shadows were like illusions in a dream. As soon as the shadow was broken, the truth hidden in it was already revealed in front of everyone. Is that pine tree sword intent? Senior brother Zhang has also mastered the pine tree sword intent? That's amazing. He deserves to be the eldest senior brother. Not only is the green bamboo sword incomparably powerful, but he has also mastered the pine tree sword intent. This time, the devil Li Yu will definitely lose. The disciples of the Green Mountain sect under the stage cheered happily. They expressed great admiration for Zhang Yulin's hidden strength and his countless trump cards. However, Zhang Yulin's face was pale, and he was sweating all over. The long sword in his hand had been unsteady. He had been exposed. His murder and framing had been exposed. All of his ambitions, all of his great ambitions, all of his great undertakings had been destroyed. Chapter 1309. Zhang Yulin hid the pine sword intent. The battle between Li Yu and Zhang Yulin had caused quite a disturbance, so Li Qingshan and the others obviously paid attention to it. In particular, Li Qingshan paid attention to it. When he saw Li Yu challenge Zhang Yulin, he was worried that Li Yu would suffer, so he had been paying close attention the entire time. Now that he saw Zhang Yulin reveal the hidden pine sword intent, Li Qingshan immediately thought of the reason. It's him. He killed Tanny. He wanted to frame you, or... Li Qingshan suddenly stood up and took off, landing on the square in an instant. At the same time, the other elders of the Green Mountain sect all arrived as well. Zhang Yulin, so it was you. So it was you who killed Tanny. Elder Zheng Hong, who was in charge of punishment, rushed over furiously. He pointed at Zhang Yulin and bellowed furiously. Yulin, why did you do this? Zhang Yulin's father, Elder Zhang, looked at Zhang Yulin in pain. As he looked at the exposed pine sword intent, his eyes were filled with disbelief. The pine sword intent that Zhang Yulin had exposed was exactly the same as the remnant sword intent on Tan Yi. Zhang Yulin had killed Tan Yi. This was already obvious. What? Senior brother Zhang killed Tan Yi? How is that possible? At this moment, the disciples of the Green Mountain sect on the square were all shocked. Zhang Yulin's perfect image collapsed loudly at this moment. The disciples only felt rather stunned. Senior brother Zhang, Qi Ying, who stood on the edge of the square, was completely stunned. Ha ha ha! At this moment, Zhang Yulin, who had been exposed, suddenly laughed madly at the sky. His handsome face was twisted viciously. Why? You're still asking me why? Zhang Yulin pointed at Li Yu. He's arrogant and despicable. He's shameless. However, haven't you always planned on letting him inherit your position? Haven't you always wanted him to become the next sect leader? Why should I? I'm better than him in every aspect. Why should he become the next sect leader? Why shouldn't it be me? Zhang Yulin roared out viciously like a revolutionary who was destroying injustice. Interesting. How interesting. Li Yu looked up at Zhang Yunlin and shook his head with a smile. I say, is there something wrong with your brain? Are you suffering from paranoia? Where did you hear that I will be the next sect leader? The son inherits the father's business. The sect master must be planning to pass the position to you. You're wrong. Li Qingshan shook his head with a sigh. Actually, you're the candidate for the next leader. If you don't believe me, you can ask your martial uncle Zhang. I discussed this matter with him. I am the candidate for the next sect leader. Zhang Yulin was stunned. He looked at Elder Zheng Hong in disbelief. Indeed, Zheng Hong took a deep look at Zhang Yulin and sighed as he shook his head. However, it seems that you are not the right person. Yulin, Two lines of tears rolled down from Elder Zhang's eyes. His face was filled with pain. Me? Ha! Me? Ha ha! So I am the candidate to take over the position of sect leader? At this moment, Zhang Yulin went completely mad. All his plans had been for naught. It had actually backfired on him. I was the candidate for the next sect leader in the first place. What was the point of me doing so much? You can be unyielding if you have no desires. The more you think, the more you do, the more mistakes you make. Liu chuckled and waved his hand at Zhang Yulin. Do you know? If you didn't do anything, you would still be the next sect leader. That's why you're completely looking for trouble, digging your own grave. Looking for trouble, digging my own grave. Ha ha ha, you're really digging your own grave. Zhang Yulin's face darkened and paled. He only felt like his entire life was a tragedy. His entire life had lost its meaning. Bang! Suddenly, the sword chi in Zhang Yulin's body erupted. Suddenly, he blew himself up just like that. Yulin, Elder Zhang, could not save him in time. He saw the pile of ashes that had been destroyed by the sword light. He howled at the sky and wept bitterly. Sigh. Li Qingshan and the others shook their heads and sighed as well. Senior Brother Zhang. The disciples of the Qingshan sect were all dumbfounded. Senior Brother Zhang is already dead. My previous plan has already failed. Qiying looked up at Li Yu standing on a high platform. This guy's strength is actually not worse than Senior Brother Zhang. Senior Brother Zhang is dead. In the future, he will definitely take over as the sect leader. He is so obsessed with me. I think as long as I use a little words, I can play him around. In this way, the Qingshan sect will be mine in the future. Green tea bitch Qi-Ying, at this moment, revealed the nature of a scheming bitch. Zhang Yulin blew himself up and died. The matter was over. The elders and the disciples of the sect left one after another. Li Yu also turned and walked out of the square, intending to return to the Yusha Peak Immortal's Cave. Li Yu, thank you. When Li Yu walked out of the square and passed by the stairs, Qi-Ying suddenly walked up to him. She lowered her head and thanked Li Yu. Thank me? Why? Li Yu was stunned for a moment. Thank you? What's wrong with her? Thanking Li Yu for molesting you is very good and comfortable. Thank you for exposing Senior Brother Zhang's true face and waking me up. Qi-Ying's face showed a look of relief. She looked at Li Yu with a face full of gratitude. I was once bewitched by his appearance and admired him very much. Fortunately, you exposed his true face and let me know that he is a sinister villain. Also let me. Speaking of this, Qi-Ying's face blushed. Her voice became very low, but it was just enough for Li Yu to hear. It also let me understand who is the one that I can really fall in love with. Bright eyes like water. Qi-Ying looked at Li Yu with deep meaning. The meaning was self-evident. Oh, Li Yu nodded faintly. You found the one that you can really fall in love with. Qi-Ying's face blushed shyly and slightly lowered her head. So that's how it is. Li Yu chuckled. Then, I wish you all the best. With that, Li Yu waved his hand confidently, turned around, and left without taking a single cloud with him, leaving only Qi-Ying, who was as if struck by lightning. I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best. These words echoed in Qi-Ying's mind, making her face redder and redder. This was not a blush of shyness, but a blush of anger. Didn't you say that you were obsessed with me? Didn't you say that you were obsessed with me? Didn't you say that the strange pine sword intent was comprehended because you were obsessed with me? Why is it like this? How could it be like this? Shouldn't you be beckoning me with your finger and wagging your tail in front of me? Shouldn't you be obedient and be at my mercy? Shouldn't you be able to order me around with just a little bit of words? How could it be like this? Whether it was the green tea attribute or this scheming attribute, they were unable to calm Qi-Ying down. I was actually dumped? Dumped by a guy that I've never even looked at in the eye. An extremely resentful resentment rose in Qi-Ying's heart. Qi-Ying's face became gloomy. Chapter 13:10. You actually want me to take over the business? How could you not see what Qi-Ying was thinking? Zhang Yulin's reputation was ruined, and he committed suicide. Qi-Ying's investment in him was a complete failure. Li Yu's rise allowed Qi Ying to find a new investment target. So, she set her sights on Li Yu. What kind of person was His Majesty Emperor Yu? He was a tyrannical existence with a harem at home, but he was still single. More than holding hands would cause the four-plane destroyer to descend. His Majesty Emperor Yu said that he was never worried about the plane destroyer because he had never even held hands. Qi Ying wanted him to take over the business, but that was simply flirting with a blind man. Killing a fly with a wave of my hand, there's no sense of accomplishment. Eliminating Zhang Yulin, this scourge, was simply not difficult for Li Yu. It was like casually killing a fly. Next, I need to let this alias soar into the sky. This alias was very important. All of Li Yu's activities in the Eldritch world required this alias to appear. In particular, looking for the primordial violet vapor required this identity to appear. The primordial violet vapor was the key to becoming a saint, and it was definitely the goal of many mighty figures. Without a certain level of strength, this alias could not participate in this kind of thing. Therefore, it was necessary to find a reasonable reason to let this alias rise. In fact, Li Yu was Li Yu. It was he who used the myriad transformations ability to become Li Yu. Therefore, cultivation was not a problem. He just needed a reasonable excuse. Then, I'll find an opportunity and let this alias rise to prominence. The Eldritch world was a holy land for cultivation. There are definitely many places like ancient cultivators' cave abodes and ancient ruins. He could not use his true strength, nor could he use the Eye of Chaos to search, but didn't Li Yu still have a system? Scan the Green Mountain sect and see if there are any cave abodes or ruins nearby. The system was the proof of chaos, of the third step of chaos. Even a saint would not be able to detect it. With just one sweep, the Qingshan sect's encampment, as well as the surrounding 10,000 miles, was scanned by the system in an instant. There's an ancient relic in the base of the Qingshan sect. Looking at the result of the system scan, Li Yu found that there was an ancient relic right under the main peak of the Green Mountain in the base of the Green Mountain sect. It was the abode of an ancient cultivator, which seemed to be related to the Green Mountain sect. Not bad. This opportunity is just right. Li Yu's avatar had providence to begin with. After Zhang Yulin died, his providence seemed to have increased. Obtaining the treasures of his ancient ruin also conformed to the rules of this world. It was not eye-catching. What? Are you going to cultivate in seclusion at the waterfall cliff in the back mountain? Li Yu planned on looking for an opportunity, so he told Li Qingshan that he was going to waterfall cliff for secluded cultivation. This left Li Qingshan extremely shocked. Could it be that this son was really enlightened? Had the prodigal son really turned over a new leaf? He was actually not going to wreak havoc in the sect, not going to bully fellow disciples, not going to nurse the female disciples. Instead, he was going to enter secluded cultivation? What? Can I? Then forget it. I'm going to find Third Fatty for a drink. Li Yu shrugged his shoulders indifferently, turned around, and left. Don't. Li Qingshan stopped Li Yu in a hurry. He secretly regretted it inside. It was rare for this bastard to lose his mind, planning on entering secluded cultivation. How would he stop him? Go into secluded cultivation. Waterfall Cliff is a good place. It's perfect for cultivation. Li Qingshan was afraid that Li Yu would change his mind, so he nodded in a hurry. All right then, I'm going into secluded cultivation. Waving his hand at Li Yu turned around and left the hall of Green Mountain. He rode off on a sword and hurried off to Waterfall Cliff. This kid, has he really changed? That's fantastic. In the past few days, the cultivation Li Yu had demonstrated had both surprised and delighted Li Qingshan. However, when he thought about Li Yu's arrogant and despotic personality and his notorious reputation, Li Qingshan felt extremely helpless. Now that he saw Li Yu had finally learnt properly and embarked on the right path, Li Qingshan ravished with joy. Yuer's talent is extraordinary. He managed to master the sword intent of the 10 swords of Green Mountain by slacking off in cultivation. Once he cultivates seriously, once he sets his mind on the right path, he'll definitely improve even faster. Li Qingshan stroked his beard and smiled in relief. However, Senior Brother Sect Master, Liu, this bastard is really too outrageous. Are you going to do something about it or not? Just as Li Qingshan was feeling relieved, Qi Ying's master, Elder Lin Shi, rushed into the hall furiously with a darkened face. Liu, didn't he enter secluded cultivation at Waterfall Cliff? What's wrong now? Li Qingshan raised his head and looked at Lin Shi in confusion. Junior Sister Lin, just what has Liu gotten into this time? Liu had clearly gone into secluded cultivation. How could he get into trouble like that? How could he get into trouble like that? Wasn't Waterfall Cliff a wasteland? No one went there, so what could he get into trouble for? Secluded cultivation? He told you he went to Waterfall Cliff for secluded cultivation? Lin Shi looked at Li Qingshan in surprise and fury. Senior Brother, a few days ago, I saw how remote Waterfall Cliff was, and the spring water was rich in spiritual qi, so I gave it to the female disciples as a place to bathe. Liu went to Waterfall Cliff for secluded cultivation? He clearly heard about this and purposefully went there to peek. Arg! Li Qingshan was dumbfounded. He collapsed into the chair as his chest heaved. He struggled to catch his breath for quite some time. Vile spawn! Vile spawn! How infuriating! How infuriating! At that moment, even Li Qingshan's hands trembled. What happened to the return of the prodigal son? What happened to secluded cultivation? So, that was what he was planning. Bastard! You vile spawn! Boom! Li Qingshan smashed the table before him to pieces with a slap. Junior Sister Lin, where's that vile spawn? Capture him for me. I definitely won't spare him. At the Emerald Cypress Peak. I told Senior Brother Zheng Hong to lock him up there. Let's go. Li Qingshan suddenly stood up and rushed towards the Emerald Cypress Peak as a streak of light. Vile spawn. He walked into the punishment hall of the Emerald Cypress Peak and saw Liu standing in the hall. He roared out furiously and swung his hand over. Peeking at female disciples bathing was as shameless as it could get. How could Li Qingshan tolerate this? What the fuck? He's actually hit me? How could His Majesty Emperor you just take a slap like that? He stepped aside and dodged in a hurry. How dare you dodge? Li Qingshan was furious. His eyes burned as he glared viciously at Liu. I said, this is a misunderstanding. I didn't know there was someone there at all. Would you believe me? Liu sighed helplessly. Waterfall Cliff is clearly a wasteland. No one has ever come and gone there. How was I supposed to know that it had become a bathhouse for female disciples? You're still lying. You were clearly the one who heard about this. Marshal Aunt Lin, which I of yours saw me asking about this. Your White Cloud Peak is so large, yet you can't find a place to bathe? Why'd you have to go to Waterfall Cliff to play in the water? Even if you wanted to go to Waterfall Cliff to play in the water, why didn't you tell the headmaster? How can you blame me for this? Liu's heart was burning with anger. What a bunch of vulgar women. Even a glance at I would wash their eyes. So why would they need to peek? Chapter 13:11. How dare you quibble? Lin Shi flew into a rage. She pointed at Liu's nose and cursed. You've always been despicable and shameless. You can even molest someone, so why can't you do something as despicable and shameless as peeping? With that, even Liu was infuriated no matter how good-tempered he was. Peeping at you? Just based on the fact that you guys have no breasts and no buttocks, this young master would go blind just by looking at you. Why would I peep at you guys? Even if you invited me, I couldn't be bothered. You dash. Liu's cursing made Lin Shi tremble with anger. She almost vomited blood. How dare you? Li Qingshan bellowed out. You bastard! How dare you run your mouth off like that? Did I say something wrong? Liu straightened his neck and snorted coldly. They've turned Waterfall Cliff into a place to play with water. Have they reported this to the sect? Even you, the sect leader, don't know, so how am I supposed to know? They were caught playing with water in the wilderness in broad daylight. So how can they blame others? Li Qingshan calmed down. He also felt that it was very likely that Liu could not be blamed for this. It was very simple. If Liu really wanted Peep, why would he report to him that he was going to enter secluded cultivation at Waterfall Cliff? Would it not be better if he snuck away after peeping without anyone noticing? Li Qingshan looked at Lin Shi. Junior sister Lin, only you know that your White Cloud Peak has designated Waterfall Cliff as a place to play with water. Liu didn't know about this and accidentally barged in. This is indeed a misunderstanding. Oomph. Lin Shi snorted heavily and turned around to leave. If they wanted to take this seriously, they really could not blame anyone else. They had designated Waterfall Cliff as a place for female disciples to play with water, yet they had never reported it to the sect. Instead, they had acted on their own. That was no longer justifiable. Moreover, they were playing with water in the wilderness in broad daylight without notifying anyone. If someone accidentally barged in, there really was nothing they could do about it. If it were not for Liu's notorious reputation, even Lin Shi would not have been able to pursue this matter. Wait, Liu stopped Lin Shi, Senior Uncle Lin. The scenery at Waterfall Cliff is not bad. I want that place. I'm going to use it for closed-door cultivation. In the future, don't come here again. What? Lin Shi suddenly turned around and glared at Liu with fiery eyes. The Waterfall Cliff was originally the sect's territory, and it wasn't designated as a forbidden area. From today onwards, I will be staying at Waterfall Cliff. If you come again, don't say that I was peeping. Liu grunted coldly, flicked his sleeve, and stepped out of the hall. When he passed by Lin Shi, Liu deliberately sneered and said, "Don't think too highly of yourself. Just based on your trash, this young master doesn't even look at you." After another incident, Liu felt a little depressed in his heart. Not only did it affect his mood, but it even wasted time. It was utterly annoying. Forget it. After entering the underground ruins from Waterfall Cliff, I have an excuse to break through. I can't be bothered with the trivial matters of the Green Mountain sect anymore. I better go out and explore. With Liu's identity, getting involved in the trifling matters of low-level cultivators was far too degrading. If it were not for the fact that he could not reveal his cultivation, Liu even planned on teaching them a lesson. Riding on a streak of light, Liu flew along the path and returned to Waterfall Cliff very soon. Right now, there were no longer any birds on Waterfall Cliff. There was only a waterfall and a pool. Let's wait a few days first. Li Qingshan will definitely be keeping an eye on me for the next few days. Liu sat beside the pool, meditating calmly. He would stand up from time to practice the sword. He seemed like he was in secluded cultivation. An entire month passed. If Liu was not practicing qi, he would be practicing the sword. He really did seem to be cultivating seriously. With that, Li Qingshan, who had been keeping an eye on Liu, stopped worrying. In his eyes, Liu really had turned over a new leaf, beginning to cultivate seriously. Liu has always been stubborn and mischievous. It's truly commendable that he can settle down now and embark on the right path. Li Qingshan laughed in relief. He no longer kept an eye on Liu. Very good. It's time for me to enter the underground dwelling. Sensing that Li Qingshan was no longer keeping an eye on him, and that there was no one else in the surroundings, Liu dove into the pool with a single movement. Landing at the bottom of the pool, Liu found a sealed cave under a rock. No wonder no one discovered it. There aren't any spiritual qi pulses at the entrance, nor are there any talismans or restrictions. It's just a mechanism. He extended his hand and pushed, opening up a passageway around 3 meters across in the rock. Liu leapt into the passageway. He advanced along the passageway. The passageway went up horizontally, leading to the cliff of the waterfall. There was a platform in the cliff, and a teleportation formation was engraved on it. This was the entrance to the underground ruins. Stepping into the teleportation formation, Li Qingshan produced a streak of light with a wave of his hand. With a flash of light, Liu immediately entered the underground ruins. The Evergreen Hall? A stone tablet stood at the entrance to the ruins. The 3 words Evergreen Hall were engraved on it. It really is connected to the Green Mountain sect. The Green Mountain sect's cultivation method for practicing qi was called the Evergreen Scripture. It probably had something to do with the Evergreen Hall. Liu extended his hand and pushed open the door, entering the underground ruins. This was a dwelling. Due to the restrictions, The dwelling that had been abandoned for countless years did not accumulate any dust, nor was it dilapidated at all. However, the owner of the dwelling had already abandoned it a long time ago. Everything in the dwelling had been taken away. In the empty immortal's cave, Liu only found a jade slip. I am Chang Qingzi from the Kunlun Mountains. When I passed by this place, I sensed something and went into seclusion for 100 years to become a grand unity, true immortal. I enlightened the stones in front of the mountain and the pine trees in front of the dwelling, turning them into boys. Remembering that the boys served me for 100 years, I passed down the evergreen scripture to end the karma. The two boys of the Tsang Mountain and Pine Tree did not have enough root vessels. It was difficult for them to achieve the great Tao. However, the heavenly Tao is unpredictable. There is always a chance that has not been lost. I leave the complete evergreen scripture here. If fate allows it, you can obtain my true teachings. Behind it was the complete evergreen scripture. So you are a disciple of the Kunlun Mountains. No wonder you are so mysterious. Liu curled his lips in disdain. He took in a disciple, passed down a scripture, and said that his root vessels were not enough. Then he left the complete, true teachings. If he wanted to pass it down, he would pass it down. If he did not want to, he would not pass it down. It was unnecessary to play so many tricks. This was how the disciples of the Chan sect did things. However, the complete evergreen scripture and the complete inheritance of a grand unity true immortal are also very useful for my disguise to raise my cultivation. With a sweep of his thoughts, the evergreen scripture entered his mind. At Liu's level of cultivation, a cultivation method that was only a grand unity true immortal at best was basically too easy. Now that I have the cultivation method, all I have to do is wait here for a while, and I'll be able to openly break through to the Void Return Realm and become an immortal. Immortals at the Void Return Realm were only the lowest level of immortals. There were also Earth Immortals, Heavenly Immortals, Grand Unity, True Immortals, and so on. However, it was enough for Liu for now. Immortals at the Void Return Realm were already peak existences in the Green Mountain sect. What? Yours gone? A month later, when Liu paid attention to Waterfall Cliff again, he suddenly discovered that Liu had vanished. This filled Li Qingshan with both surprise and anger. He rushed towards Waterfall Cliff in a hurry. Li Qingshan's here? Then it's time to get out. With a flash of green light, the power of a return to Void Immortal erupted from Liu. Rumble. The ground shook, and a figure suddenly rushed out from the pool below Waterfall Cliff. It shone with green light and gave off a startling aura. It was a return to Void Immortal. Who are you? You, Why? You've become an immortal at the Void Return Realm? Seeing that the figure who had rushed out of the pool was Liu, and sensing Liu's cultivation at the return to Void Immortal, Li Qingshan rubbed his eyes. He found it hard to believe. Liu has become an immortal? The elders of the Green Mountain sect who had rushed over after hearing the disturbance all became dumbfounded when they saw the figure shrouded in green light hovering in the air. He can actually become an immortal? Lin Shi, who disliked Liu very much, was shocked when she saw this. All she felt was that this reality was far too cruel. She could not face it. Chapter 13:12. Liu had become an immortal. This news swept through the entire Green Mountain sect like a storm. The first reaction of everyone who heard this was bullshit. What was Liu's cultivation? He had always been at early soul transformation. Only a few days ago did he show sword intent. Even when he fought Zhang Yulin and ended up in a draw, Liu was nowhere near as strong in terms of cultivation. More importantly, there was a hurdle of depositing the soul in space when breaking through to Void Return after reaching great completion of soul transformation. Zhang Yulin had reached great completion of soul transformation for many years now, but he had always been stuck at depositing the soul in space, unable to reach Void Return. Just what had you done to actually break through from early soul transformation all the way to Void Return and become an immortal in just 2 short months? It's also a coincidence. Li Yu and Li Yu sat opposite each other in the hall of Green Mountain. As Li Qingshan was both surprised and puzzled, Li Yu extended his hand and took out an ancient jade slip. This is, accepting the jade slip and reading the information inside. Li Qingshan leapt up in surprise. This is the evergreen scripture that leads directly to Tai? The complete evergreen scripture? W. Where did you get it? Waterfall Cliff. Li Yu smiled at Li Qingshan. When I was cultivating in seclusion at Waterfall Cliff, I suddenly thought of a question. Why did Marshal Aunt Lin designate Waterfall Cliff as a place for female disciples to play in the water? As he said that, Li Yu extended his hand and pointed at the jade slip in Li Qingshan's hand. As a result, I began searching carefully at Waterfall Cliff. By coincidence, I found a ruin in the pool below Waterfall Cliff. No wonder you can return to Void Return and become an immortal. No wonder junior sister Lin wants Waterfall Cliff. She probably knows a few clues too. The light in Li Qingshan's eyes flickered, and they became rather cold. He stowed the jade slip away and ordered Li Yu, "Don't tell anyone about this. Just the two of us need to know about the complete evergreen scripture." Understood. Li Yu nodded seriously, but he snickered inside. Lin Shi, didn't you find me an eyesore? I'll pin a crime on you so that you won't have the chance to come in contact with the complete evergreen scripture. This was basically a small revenge. You've already returned to the void and become an immortal. What are your plans next? Li Qingshan looked at his son, who had already become an immortal, and felt very relieved. Returning to the void to become an immortal was already considered to have achieved the fruits of one's cultivation. In the area of the Green Mountain sect, he was already considered a top figure. I want to go out and travel. Li Yu didn't want to continue playing tricks in the Green Mountain sect. He really didn't have time for that. It was necessary for him to travel outside. Traveling, Li Qingshan sank into his thoughts and nodded. With your strength, it really is time for you to go out and see the world. But traveling outside is not like being in the sect. People outside will not care about your identity. You must remember not to be willful. Don't worry. Even if I am arrogant and despotic, I am not brainless. Li Yu smiled and shook his head. When I travel, I won't use a carriage to show off. I'll travel the world alone with a sword. That's right. Li Qingshan nodded. Don't show off, don't be arrogant, and keep a low profile. That's the way to travel outside. I don't have to worry if you think like that. With an immortal's cultivation and a low profile, there basically wouldn't be any danger. I'll go make some preparations. I'll be leaving tomorrow. After bidding farewell to Li Yu stood up and left the Hall of Green Mountain, returning to prepare for his travels. Master, I heard Li Yu has become an immortal? Is that true? In the dwelling on White Cloud Peak, Qi Ying asked Lin Shi in shock and doubt. Qi Ying had heard the rumor that Li Yu had reached the return to void and become an immortal in a single stroke. This left Qi Ying astounded. She found it hard to believe. It's true. Li Yu has indeed returned to the return of void and become an immortal. Lin Shi let out a long sigh. Her expression was extremely mixed. Who would have thought that this guy with a notorious record and a terrible reputation, this arrogant, despotic, ignorant, and incompetent guy, would actually become an immortal? With the return of void and become an immortal, Li Yu's cultivation was already on the same level as Lin Shi's. Li Yu had returned to the return of void and become an immortal in his teens, while Lin Shi herself had cultivated for over a century before barely reaching the return of void. Li Yu would definitely have a bright future ahead of him. However, Lin Shi had already offended this youth with a bright future ahead of him. An inexplicable sense of remorse, mixed with fear and panic, lingered in Lin Shi's heart, making her somewhat restless. Li Yu has actually become an immortal? Qi Ying was extremely shocked. A thought surged in Qi Ying's mind. This kind of person, I must capture him in my hands. I must capture him in my hands. I must not let him go. So what if I've been rejected by him once? With my looks and means, I don't believe that I can't take him down. After making up her mind, Qi Ying excused herself from White Cloud Hall and returned to her dwelling. After meticulously dressing up, she walked gracefully into Li Yu's dwelling. Senior brother Li, Little sister Chi Ying is here to visit. Her soft voice carried a bit of charm that was just right. It was coquettish and enchanting, yet not frivolous, making people intoxicated. Chi Ying, who had the green tea attribute, was very experienced in how to make use of her assets. Just her voice alone could play a lot of tricks. Creak! The dwelling's door slowly opened, and a figure walked out from the door. However, it wasn't Liu, but Wang Xian. So, it's junior sister Chi Ying. Wang Xian's fat face gave birth to a smile. Junior sister Chi Ying is here to look for young Master Yu. Hello, senior brother Wang. Chi Ying smiled sweetly. Yes. Little sister has something to consult senior brother Liu about, so I specially came to visit. Towards Wang Xian, this third fatty, Chi Ying had never looked him in the eye. However, since he was Liu's friend, Chi Ying naturally had to rope him in. With Wang Xian's help, it would be much easier to take down Liu. Aya, junior sister came at the wrong time. Wang Xian shook his head regretfully. Junior sister Chi Ying, young master Yu has already left. He's no longer in Green Mountain sect. Left? Chi Ying's heart shook as she hurriedly asked, where did he go? Young Master Yu's cultivation was successful, so he went out to travel. Why, you didn't know? He didn't tell you? Wang Xian looked at Chi Ying in shock. It's really strange. Young Master Yu went out to travel. Such a big matter. Why didn't he tell you? He obviously did it for you, and... Oh, sorry. Sorry. Seeing Chi Ying's face turning somewhat ugly, Wang Xian hurriedly shut his mouth and cupped his hands to take his leave. From afar, Chi Ying could still hear Wang Xian muttering in a low voice. Young Master Yu is indeed a hero, eating up and wiping it clean, casually tossing it aside. Indeed brilliant. Eating up and wiping it clean, casually tossing it aside? Chi Ying was so angry that her face turned ashen, trembling all over. Bastard! Bastard! Go to hell! Go to hell! Heavily stomping her foot, Chi Ying flung her sleeves and turned around to leave. Without him around, no matter how many tricks she had, no matter how good she was at seduction, it was all useless. Chapter 13:13. Liu didn't know that there was such a thing. Moreover, he wouldn't care about such things at all. Travel? I really need to travel. Whether it was looking for the so-called primordial violet chi, or his own cultivation comprehension, at his current level, it was impossible to blindly cultivate behind closed doors. Liu's first step in achieving chaos was also a comprehension of the mortal world. He happened to be born from the eyeless silkworm, and was inspired, so he cut off his own body and turned into chaos. Now, to turn into chaos, he also needed to comprehend. No matter what the primordial violet chi was, Liu is never the kind of person to place his hopes on others. Humans have three treasures: essence, energy, and spirit. All along, I've been using the three treasures of essence, energy, and spirit to advance together and merge into one. That's how I became immortal. Liu landed on a cliff thousands of miles away from the Green Mountain sect. He sat cross-legged on a rock and began to ponder again. Logically speaking, when I became immortal, I had already merged the three treasures of essence, energy, and spirit. After my body turned into chaos, it should be natural to turn into chaos, but I haven't been able to take this step. What's missing? Back then, Liu had become immortal. Through various comprehensions, he had absorbed the Tao of all living beings in the renegade immortal world. With the power of intent, he had merged his soul, body, and chi refinement cultivation into one. He had become immortal. Later on, he had comprehended chaos along the way. Chaos was immeasurable, formless, disorderly, and formless. He had comprehended bit by bit and advanced bit by bit. Unknowingly, he had separated the three treasures of essence, energy, and spirit. After being together for a long time, it must be separated for a long time. In the midst of separation and reunion, I have climbed a new level step by step. This is the process of seeing a mountain as a mountain, seeing a mountain as a mountain, seeing a mountain as a mountain. Liu thought about it and felt that there was no problem with his path. There shouldn't be such a hindrance. Forget it. Thinking hard won't solve the problem. Let's use the method I am best at. What was Liu best at? Tricking people? Of course not. Wasn't Liu's forte in gifting opportunities? Previously, I gave out thousands of opportunities, allowing me to escape the saint's surveillance. However, these fortuitous encounters were all created casually and had no experimental value. Therefore, we need to find a few subjects that are worth experimenting on. There were still many mighty figures in the primordial world. Zhen Yuanzi, Nether River Patriarch, Demon Master Kunpeng, Dipankar Buddha, and Hao Yin Yaoqi were all quasi-saints. Their path was different from Liu's. They did not take the first step of transforming their bodies into chaos. Instead, they only cultivated their qi to the point where they were about to go against the innate heavens and transform into chaos. These people can all be used for experiments. Without the primordial violet vapor, I will make some primordial violet vapor, myself, and release some of my ideas in the form of primordial violet vapor for them to verify. When Liu achieved the first step of primal chaos, he had killed Old Black Yak and Luo Tian. Now, he was going to reach the second step of chaos and kill a few preeminent sages of the untainted land. Wasn't this in line with Li Da's style? The second step of primal chaos is really too dangerous. With Liu's current qi cultivation, he was only a step away from transforming into chaos. However, he couldn't cross this line, because he sensed that he was still missing a key. Perhaps the key was the primordial violet vapor. Without this key, Liu could clearly sense that if he dared to force his way through, only death would await him. Chaos would only die in chaos. When ascending to the second step of primal chaos, a single careless mistake would lead to chaos annihilation, and death would be right in front of his eyes. Liu was very cautious. All along, no matter which step or checkpoint it was, Liu would first conduct experiments as long as there were risks and difficulties. He would only use it on himself after ensuring that there were no mistakes. That was why Liu was actually very afraid of death. I don't want to be a martyr who sacrificed his life for the cause of revolution. On the path of cultivation, the slightest difference can lead to thousands of miles of deviation. One wrong step can lead to death. Naturally, I have to take every step steadily. After making up his mind, Liu got up and stepped out of the cliff. He flew up and began to travel around. With his current status, he did not have the ability to torment a primordial quasi-sage. First, he had to raise his cultivation level and then find a suitable opportunity to send out the primordial violet vapor that Liu needed to experiment on. That was the most appropriate thing. The escape light whistled through the sky, roaming the world and galloping through the greater world. In this vast and boundless primordial world, Liu flew aimlessly in a random direction. He walked and stopped, walking and looking around. Along the way, Liu saw endless mountains, vast lakes, rushing rivers, and vast plains. Of course, he also saw countless cultivators and demons. With the immortal realm that Liu revealed, he could be considered an expert. There were no cultivators or demons who were blind enough to come up and kill him for his treasures or rob him halfway. Fellow Taoist, please wait. Half a year later, Liu was chatting with a monkey with 6 ears in a demon mountain. After drinking the monkey wine and bidding farewell, he suddenly heard someone calling him from behind. Fellow Taoist, please wait. F***CK. Hearing this, Liu trembled all over. What was fellow Taoist, please wait? This was the greatest curse in the primordial world. Immortals, Buddhas, demons, and demons alike would definitely die. It was a curse of the same level as go home and marry a wife after the war, or retire after the last job. This curse is too scary. Even I can't stand it. The apotheosis had not begun yet, but it would probably happen soon. At this time, hearing fellow Taoist, please wait, was simply hair-raising. Without looking back, Liu rode on the escape light and galloped all the way without stopping. Hey, wait, wait. There was a call behind him. A man in a Taoist robe rode on the escape light, and sped up to catch up with Li Yu. Not long after, a man in a green Taoist robe with leopard-like eyes and thick eyebrows caught up to Li Yu. "Fellow Taoist, why are you running so fast? I have a hard time chasing you." The leopard-eyed man panted heavily and looked at Li Yu with a puzzled face. "I, Shun Gongbao, am a disciple of a saint of the Kunlun Mountains Jade Void sect. I'm not an evil demon. Why are you running?" "It's really you." The corners of Li Yu's mouth twitched. "It's because of you, because of a jinx like you, I have to run." However, Li Yu's current identity was only at the immortal realm. He could not outrun Shun Gongbao, a grand unity perfected immortal. There was nothing he could do. "Fellow Taoist, you have the evergreen true qi. This is the cultivation technique of my martial nephew, Chong Qingzi. May I know what is your relationship with Chong Qingzi?" Shen Gongbao revealed the reason why he was chasing Li Yu, which made Li Yu extremely depressed. "T, I actually became the junior of Shun Gongbao, the Jinx. How am I going to survive in the future?" You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.